Hello.
How's it going? Welcome to the Vanguard. So glad to be joined by you once again.
Hey
Olay.
y'all. Hey y'all. Yeah. So I seen this. It was sent to me. This is not the first wild ass banana piece of shit take she's had since the time of. Every time I said this before, and I'm gonna say it again. And since, well, you know what? Let me say it, because fuck her. Since she always want to have my fucking name in her mouth. All right. Boom. They've been for a year on some right-wing bullshit. I want to let the record reflect. These people have never been as fucking progressive as people have let them masquerade and begin to believe in the first place. But she's been on this propaganda bullshit ass takes. Her and Jenk been running this dribble for about a fucking year now. And since they came up with this bullshit, let me explain to Anna. Okay. Clearly, you don't understand what cisgender means suddenly, right? Or suddenly your brain don't fucking work. But maybe you don't understand what gaslight means, because I think you have it misconstrued. Gaslighting would be making an entire platform where you recognize where you, Miss Mamas, verbatim went on your platform repeatedly and said you recognize these talking points as right-wing bullshit, non-issues. No one is calling you a pregnant person. You ain't been able to identify this imaginary person that called you a pregnant person fucking yet. You said that. And then perpetrated like you don't fucking remember you said that when you decided to come out and now adopt those right-wing talking points, because for whatever reason you must feel like you hit a glass ceiling on the left. Whatever you think is looking for you out there on the right, you want to, that's where you want to be. So now all of a sudden you are adopting those talking points and you mad at the rest of us because we point out that you've had a different position. No, you're gaslighting us. You are the one gaslighting us, suddenly acting like you don't fucking understand what the problem is when you were one of, according to y'all, let y'all tell it, leaders of the left, one of the main ones putting out that fucking talking point. And quite frankly, let's talk about this. You seem to not have anything to fucking do. For all this crime that's rampant around your building, bitch, put on a fucking costume and go act like a superhero and stop talking about the rest of fucking us. Because every time I look, your name, you have my name in your mouth, leftist mafia, this, blah, 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 blah. You make bad, shitty, bullshit fucking takes every day. I literally only fucking see y'all in relation to bad fucking takes. And I don't say anything because I don't give a fuck. And quite frankly, I've said this from time. This right here was a deliberate propaganda. I said this. We had no business giving her all that fucking grace when she jumped out the window with the tweet because it was on fucking purpose. She did it because she wanted us talking about it. She did it because she wanted to ingratiate herself with the right. The reason why she wanted to piss off and go at and attack all the other leftist commentators, including people who are personal friends, like all the Emma Viglins of the world, is because she needs to create the appearance to the right wing she's trying to ingratiate herself with, that, oh, the left is, she needs to separate herself apart from us. And what better fucking way to do that than to go at everybody and to fight with everybody and to keep having my black ass name in your fucking mouth. Let me explain this to y'all. I don't care for all of this. Like, Anna, let me be fucking clear. Keep my name out your mouth. The only reason why anybody even mentioned you, because I don't even think you matter. I don't even give a fuck about your white-centered view in the world. And also because you keep, I'm Armenian, but they keep saying I'm white passing. Whiteness is a construct. Maybe you should read a fucking book before you present like you the queen of the fucking leftist liberal movement. It's a construct. Am I looking at a white blonde woman? Is that how you walk into the earth? White lady. And oh, now you want to act like, oh, they're the ones that are racist because they assumed when I started peddling propaganda that I was talking about black people. So y'all are the racists, and that really what really bothers me. Girl, get the fuck out of here. You know what the
Indictments, or better, perhaps because of them. Former President Trump has nearly doubled now his campaign fundraising. According to campaign officials, Trump brought in more than $35 million in the second quarter. That's compared to the first 3 months of this year when he raised nearly $19 million. Not clear exactly how much of this money actually is going to the campaign and how much is going to his PAC Save America, which has been helping to fund Trump's legal bills. According to recent fundraising solicitations, at least 10% of donations have been going to the PAC. So, Eugene Robinson, this is in line with what we've seen in the polls that Donald Trump has surged because of the indictments against him, because of this picture he has painted of himself as a martyr, and that he needs your money, he says to his supporters, to fight them to pay his legal bills, despite the fact he claims to be a billionaire. He's got people like Senator Lindsey Graham weeping on television, asking Trump supporters to send money to pay the legal bills of a billionaire. This is how he does business, but the larger point is he's surging in the polls and raising more money because of the indictments against him.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the money and where it's going, you do have to remember, always watch for the grift when it comes to Trump. And so I would just assume right up front that a lot of the money that people are giving, that thinking that it's going to the campaign, will really go to the legal defense or somehow go to Trump. But that aside, sure, his base has rallied behind him, and these indictments in terms of fundraising have been a boon to the former president. This is the counterintuitive, crazy way that Trump and MAGA work, and so this is going to be really something for somebody like Ron DeSantis to try to overcome. You're going to need a lot of money if you're going to knock off Donald Trump in the primaries. DeSantis does have a decent amount of money. He's got a lot left over from his gubernatorial campaign the last time, but he's not raising it quite the clip that Trump is, and it's just another indicator of how Trump really is ahead for the Republican presidential nomination.
So here are those numbers following Donald Trump's disclosure of fundraising. The DeSantis campaign announced the Florida governor raised $20 million in the first 6 weeks of his presidential campaign. His super PAC, Never Back Down, it's called, also has raised $130 million, but more than $80 million of that is leftover money from his gubernatorial reelection campaign. Meanwhile, in an interview on Fox News, DeSantis was asked about his poll numbers, which have fallen in some surveys since his campaign launch. Here's what he said.
If you look at the people like the corporate media, who are they going after? Who do they not want to be the nominee? They're going after me. Who's the president of Mexico attacking because he knows we'll be strong on the border and hold him accountable in the cartels? He's going after me. So I think if you look at all these people that are responsible for a lot of the ills in our society, they're targeting me as the person they don't want to see as the candidate. We've got a huge amount of support to be able to take the case to the people. We really haven't started that yet. We're in the process of building out a great organization.
Welcome to a special Friday edition of the Nick and CJ Show. I'm one of your hosts. I'm CJ. What's up, Nick?
What's poppin', my friends, my family? It's good to be back. Good to join you guys on RBN Friday. Gonna be kicking with a few homies. Good to see Colin here in the back as well. Give us a thumbs up whenever you're ready. I'm gonna put my homie Colin in.
Yeah,
I have a lot to say on that first clip, but welcome to RBN. We've been watching since we've been on panel. I've seen you on panel with Sabby and CJ. Been watching since we had a chat. Good to see you on, brother.
Good to be here. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, CJ, for having me on again.
So that first clip is something I've been avoiding like the plague for the last few days. Ever since I heard it was circulating around the civil war between the boutique professional managerial class leftists, have been entertaining. That clip was the first time I've seen it, and it's very interesting. They said this TYT has been on this nonsense for a year now. I'm like, for a year now, huh? And there's this meltdown, this civil war. You see the PMC left eating themselves, and as actual real Marxists, leftists, revolutionaries, advocates of the proletariat, we just can laugh and point and learn lessons from their insignificant, deeply unserious spouts, because they're having this big meltdown crisis moment over TYT. Over what? Over social issues? That's what did it.
Yeah.
You guys see how it's the issues that the Democratic Party put front and center. That's the red line. I'm not saying this is not important, but I will say the breaking point should have been when they was pro-war. They were pushing Russiagate. They advocated for voting for Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. That's not the breakup point. And Kasparian going on a rant about
that is so true.
That's the red line. Very, very interesting, right? It shows how unserious they actually are in a lot of ways. This is the red line. Because we've been calling these people out for a while, but it's bad when we do it. But it's good when they call out TYT because they do it on Democratic Party terms. What's popping, Colin? What's your thoughts?
You have a little bit of an echo.
Hold on.
So that last thing you said sounded better.
Okay.
But let me put
that sounds better.
As you adjust your audio, I'm gonna add this to the conversation because Anna Kasparian's cringe takes on trans issues and social issues, those are cancelable takes. But from what I heard, Anna said stuff that's kind of right in the middle of a line. Midwestern, socially conservative, working class, Midwestern, like people I'm around. Like there are a lot of people that I know in my personal life that are great people in my personal family that will say shit that will get them canceled on Twitter. They say shit about social issues that maybe get them canceled. They're religious, they're more socially conservative. So this is my question for the Olayemi left, the Vanguard left. Who are you fighting for? Because there's a ton of people that live in Missouri, in red states, that are black, that are working class, that are socially conservative Latinos. Are you canceling them? Are they cast out of the movement if they say one bad thing about the trans movement? Another thing a lot of people don't talk about is the evangelicals in Brazil. You guys know the people who support Lula? These people are socialists, they are communists, but they also deeply religious. These are poor black Brazilians, right? They are not for gay rights. Are you canceling them? Or are we canceling Lula supporters who are socially conservative? Lula is socially conservative. You guys know that? So I'm asking you guys, why are we drawing the line on where are you guys drawing the line on these things? Why are these weird fights being picked over social issues? But we've been calling TYT out for the pro-war bullshit, right. And then we were drama seekers when we was doing that. But now it's worth the fight now, right? But sorry, Colin. There's a lot of things. I'll pass to you now.
No, you're good. But it's funny because I know people who are gay. And even they have kind of mentioned to me, why is this trans issue getting so much attention? This is what gay people I've talked about with them. So it's just nothing more to me. It's a distraction because especially with the Democrats, they don't have anything else to talk about. They can't talk about the economy because that's shit. They can't talk about anything tangible that they're going to offer the working class because that's shit. And right now they want to avoid all these strikes that are about to happen. Hopefully UPS is actually going to put their foot down and actually make moves as far as striking by the end of the month. I doubt you're going to see mainstream media talking about that, but we're going to talk about, and not to say that trans issues aren't important, but that shouldn't take over, especially what people have been talking about as far as economic issues. That should be the priority of everybody right now. Because right now, especially with student loan debt, about to start up come fall, people are not going to have any money. And given people have been, I would argue that we've been in a recession, but people and economists are now saying that, we're just going to get there. And once we're there, everyone by this time next year is going to be in a world of hurt. That should be the focus right now and not, this is just nothing more than a distraction to me.
I explained this concept before, and I'll explain it for new viewers. Fighting for your rights, fighting for your ability to live how you want to live is as legit as a struggle as there is. What's the difference between that, a fight for your rights, which is once again as legit as it comes, and a culture war? If you're gay, you're trans, to me it makes sense that you talk about these issues, right? What make no sense to me, and never makes sense to me, is why there are some white, like conservatives, some white guy in Kentucky, where there's maybe 4 trans people in the entire state, right? But that's if you look at their timeline, that's the only thing they talk about, though. Only thing they talk about is pronouns, the trans issue. You're a white American, you live in a Christian conservative community, maybe one guy in a closet within a 100-mile radius of you. But you tweet about the trans issue all the time. You talk about the trans issue all the time.
And
that's a culture war because you're fighting to influence culture. You guys see the problem there? You're fighting to influence culture instead of minding your own goddamn business. Go ahead, Colin.
I'll say this real quick. if you're talking about trans issues in terms of the intersectionality that there are in economic issues, then that would be one thing. You can talk about how trans people have needs for healthcare. You can talk about how trans people have needs, you know, as far as violence, especially trans people of color. You can make that connection there. You can talk about how trans people need connections as far as job security or housing, because, you know, as you know, trans people definitely go through those issues. But you never hear, it's just more this idea of talking about trans issues in isolation versus how does these issues, trans issues, relate to issues that I think more commonly everyone can get on board with. We still have issues as far as healthcare. We still have issues as far as housing. We still have issues, especially if you're a person of color, with violence, especially in terms of how it relates to the police. If you're able to make those issues and make those connections, then that'll be one thing. But it's like, what I'm hearing is, oh, trans issues in terms of like blockers and my rights and all, like, that's to be assumed, but never in terms of the how does this impact people, which I think for many people that might give them more bearing if you're able to relate to the economics in terms of how, but that's, you never see that, especially in these spaces, or there's not that connection as far as how can we make these issues in relation to what we've been talking about on the left forever. It's always in the case of this isolatory / theoretical stance of trans issues, and never in terms of practically how can we have trans issues be in part of what we've been talking about on the left as far as economic issues from the jump.
Now, to me, and I made my stance clear, and I was actually on some podcast not too long ago. I need to air it while I was having a conversation about this. And I was like, to me, it was clear that the ruling class picked this issue, like any other social issues, to drive a wedge and make workers fight each other. And knowing this, and that's why I approach this issue with that in mind. That's why I don't understand the boutique left who fought for it. Like to me, it's clear this is being used as a culture war divider, distraction issue. And that stance is consistent with the stance I have earlier. I think people should mind their fucking business, right? So you have a lot of people on the left that fall for the establishment trick of picking this issue as the dividing point. Why are you guys allowing this issue to be the dividing point? But you guys are okay with being like Olayemi was friendly with Anna Kasparian just a few months ago when they was talking about criminal justice.
Right.
But that despite Anna Kasparian's previous anti-blackness or previous anti-war positions, but anti-blackness don't count. Being pro-war don't count, but the Democratic Party tells you that the trans issue is important. So they pick that and they're like, all right, we need everyone to get this arbitrary issue correct. And I'm not saying
the Southern strategy. It's the Southern strategy reimagined. That's all this is. It's like, an issue like race at the time when they were using the Southern strategy, at the genesis of it, they've been using it for a long time, but it's the Southern strategy where it's like, we know we live in a racist society, so let's gin up some racism out of people by using some sort of fear tactic about Black people. This is the same exact thing where you have a marginalized group that is simply being used on both sides. I'm talking about on the sort of white professional managerial side. They don't really care about these marginalized issues. They only care about them in the terms of sort of having debates, of having these arguments to prove like virtue signal, oh, I'm the best this, when none of them is really willing to go out and do the work, have the fight, get on the ground to get those actual things. It's just a matter of argument.
It's an excuse for them not to do that, CJ. This is a way for them to block the community, because I make my opinion on this very clear. But as I had conversations with many people who bring this up, I make the point to them that, hey, don't you think this is being used as a divider? And I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I make my argument from that position while educating people without doing this nonsense where they canceling people. And it's like this red line, no discussions allowed. And that's essentially what it is, where there's no discussion allowed, no hedging of positions. If you either repeat the Democratic Party approved line on this, or you're actually canceled. and that's what's going on. That's why the feds push this out so much, because they acknowledge that this is a divisive issue and they're using this to divide the workers. I feel like as people who have revolutionary discipline, we should be able to spot that out and have our disagreements on this issue and talk about it, and not allow the establishment to be successful in dividing us using this issue. We should be actually caring about issues of the proletariat, the stances on the police, supporting the Democratic Party, supporting the Ukraine war, which all these NATO leftists do. But that's not the red line. Why not on the red line? Because the Democrats didn't establish that. They don't want that to be a red line of proletariat. They want fucking divisive culture war issues to be the red line, despite the fact I made earlier. What's your guys' answer to this question? What do you do to people I know in my family who I've seen them say stuff about trans issues? I'm like, yikes, right? But I know they're not bad people. They're just socially conservative. They grew up religious, and I got a lot of criticism of that. Mm-hmm. But if your movement building strategy is to say, fuck you, I'm not fighting for you no more, I don't want to movement build with you no more, you are deplorable, because that's the TYT left. That's the Olayemi left strategy. Anyone who don't agree on 100% on every single social culture war issue, you are exonerated, you are canceled immediately.
But they'll give them a pass when it comes to something extraordinary like Palestine or like war. But let me ask both of you this question, or let me insert this idea. TYT is losing viewership. They're losing the ability to communicate or to keep engaged people like us, and maybe a little bit further to our right. Maybe we're a little bit further left than anybody than their audience is, but they are clearly losing a segment of the population that they used to have. So they're now courting they're pivoting. Is all they're doing. This is the Jeffrey Katzenberg money showing up in their policy. So my question is, do you think it's a coincidence that Jeffrey Katzenberg gave them $20 million and now several years later, they're just slowly made this pivot? Because I don't think that's a coincidence. This is just Jeffrey Katzenberg getting his, some results, some dividends on what he invested in. So, but what do either of you think of that?
No, the fact that, and we've seen this, even in our space, that the trap that many of us could fall into is that, unfortunately, and I say this all the time, you never make money doing the right thing, even in this space. And when you start shifting, I wouldn't even say shift to the center, because when you start, the money is where you start making the shift to the right. Mm-hmm. And you see, even with TYT now, that's what they're starting to do. The fact that they've had, Matt Gaetz on like a few months ago, and the fact that now Anna, in her interview, she was like, "Oh, now I'm willing to talk to more people on the right. I'm willing to talk to Jeff Shapiro and all those other characters, but she's not willing to talk about." And you notice even what she said. She said, she's willing to talk with them, but she's not willing to talk with people like us who are more left than her, because she says, according to her, "Oh, I'm afraid that I will say the right thing and I will step in it because I am not as well versed on the issues that she should be should be of importance to her." And even with Olayemi called her out as far as trans issues. Olayemi spent time with her and Jen talking about police abolition, right? She didn't call out Anna and Anna said in that interview, "I don't give a fuck about police abolition." But she went after her regarding trans issues. So it's kind of like, but when you start making the shift to the right, that's where you're going to make the money. And I think this is Jeff Katzenberg basically making a return on his investment at this point. I think it's been very clear, and it just kind of shows, how really the idea of TYT going after Jimmy for their allegedness, oh, he's moving to the right, and now they're actively doing that, but that's okay.
It's kind of projecting. It's kind of them saying, "Look over there as we're moving." You know what I mean? Like if I'm moving right, I'm going to go, look as I'm moving to the right. And maybe that's kind of what they did with Jimmy. Now, our second guest has arrived. Anthony, are you good to go? You ready to get introduced? So let's bring in Professor Anthony Zankas in. How you doing, Anthony?
Hey, everybody. Hey, Jay. Hey, Nick. Hello, Colin. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Professor.
Thank you. You call me Anthony.
Okay, will do.
I'm just putting respect on your name, man. Sometimes you gotta put respect on someone's name. You know what I mean?
Nick usually just calls me Zankus, so I'm good with that.
Okay. Right.
I respond to this comment. I think this is actually a pretty good point. I will acknowledge this. I disagree, Nick. It's solidarity. We shouldn't sacrifice trans issue for the sake of our agenda, same as we don't sacrifice the Palestinian for any issues. And I will say you are absolutely 100% correct. What I am calling for is consistency, because these same people will throw Palestinian rights under the bus and supporting Marianne Williamson, like the Vanguard people on that show, right? And a lot of people was friends with Anna Kasparian, despite her years of anti-blackness, years of being pro-war. Olayemi was good friends. She was approaching her with kindness, so much. She was so kind that Anna Kasparian brought her on her show. We all know what kind of snowflake she is. So you got to essentially kiss her boots to be allowed to interfere, which Olayemi did enough of. And then now when she made, once again, stances that are very consistent with a lot of socially conservative Americans, not anything that sounds like completely like genocidal, not anything outside the Overton window. She just said common stances that you don't agree with, and that's what make you break. That's why I'm calling for calling out the inconsistencies. And this is what particularly bugged me as a young Black American, because you guys, well, I won't say you guys, not you, TD, but a lot of these Democrats, social Democrats, they are weak on Black issues. Like they won't draw a line on any Black issues. If someone not for reparations, whatever. Right. You know, if you remember, they were telling them during defund the police, you got to ease in defund police. You got to be easy on this. But when it comes to trans issues, you got to be 100% for the gospel, or you're dead. So you got to know for our issues, ease into it. You guys can't cancel people if they're not exactly where you at. But when it comes for Democrat issues, when it comes from the culture war issues, that's where they push into the divide. So, and I think this statement is true, with their statement being true too. I think their statement is correct. I think there's a very good comment. But
I think the way I like to describe it, when our point of view, when we're not saying trans issues aren't important. What I'm saying is, if you're letting the right set the narrative, you get what I'm saying? You're letting them set, okay, this is the top issue. It's like, what is there? One, there's not really a top issue. And if there was a top issue, I would say people literally, you're murdering people with when we get to the cluster munition, like that is a huge thing, because that can involve everybody freaking dying in a nuclear holocaust. So, you get what I'm saying? So I think what we're doing, not that trans issues is not important as any other issue that we're fighting for, is that let's not let the right set the narrative so that we can all get riled up about something. We know that all these issues are important, so let's not let them rile us up. And that's essentially sort of my point of view. But let's bring in Anthony. I know you kind of was brought in on this. So we played, while we were waiting to start, we played a video of the Vanguard had Olayemi on, and she's basically, the whole thing that's happened with Anna. I'm sure you've seen what's happening with Anna. She said some things. So we've evolved from talking about necessarily the video. We're just talking about what we see was happening to TYT, this rightward shift. Is it a coincidence following the money from Jeffrey Katzenberg? So now I think you're all caught up. What say you on the topic of what do you have to include?
I mean, it was very obvious to me a few months back when Anna said some transphobic things. She was all upset. She said, I don't want to be referred to as a birthing person. I'm a woman. And the reality is the term birthing person is not something people use in everyday language to describe anybody. It's a medical term. Nobody's ever called Anna that, ever. Okay? And when we pressed her, when were you ever called that? She couldn't come up with the time anybody said, hey, you birthing person. Doesn't happen. Nobody uses that language. It's medical language. And so I said I thought, they're really jumping on the right. But I have to say this. I'm seeing it in different areas. I don't consider TYT the left, although they're perceived to be the left. They're not.
Right.
But there are people I like who are saying things that are not very inclusive or understanding. And I just, I did a thread on it today, and I do want to throw something out about the trans issue. So, like, first of all, trans people, drag queens, all this stuff has existed for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And recent past, most people didn't have a problem with it. There are kids who are trans. Most people didn't have a problem with that either. And all of a sudden, I think, my perspective, it's just my perspective. Like, we've got a shitty economy. The Biden screwed up so bad. The worst inflation. The worst inflation in 40 years. People are suffocating. They can't afford their bills. The Republicans, if they wanted to run on the economy, could do a cakewalk into the White House in 2024. But they don't have any solutions either.
Right.
They're perfectly happy with the $7.25 minimum wage. They don't want it to be raised. So because Republicans have zero solutions and Democrats also don't have solutions, the Republicans have decided we're upset about the queer community. And all of a sudden, people, literally Rudy Giuliani wore drag a few years ago.
Yeah. Remember Trump used to come out and he used to do events with drag.
Listen, Donald Trump. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll pass it back to you, Zach, because you're making a great point. And this is a point I made before, and I will continue to make despite culture warriors crying about it. This is manufactured by the media. The media manufactured consent.
Yeah.
The right-wing media started pushing the trans issue out, and all of a sudden people started caring about it again, even though it has most part nothing to do with 99% of people's lives. And people pretend the internet is not a thing, and they'll do this thing like, you see this video, this the direction. It used to never be like this. And I'm like, how do you fucking know? Back then there was no internet. What you guys do, they take the most extreme examples and say, oh, this is a new problem. I'm like, no. They are trying to manufacture consent to distract you, and I don't think that's a coincidence that they started. Remember, their polls show that people are more class conscious than ever. Socialism more popular than ever. People are against the red-blue game. I don't think it's a coincidence that the establishment on both sides pushes out more now that people are becoming more class conscious. They're more desperate to distract. But go ahead, Zinkus. Sorry.
We have Medea. Have anybody heard of Medea? Have you heard of Bosom Buddies? Tom Hanks used to have a TV show called Bosom Buddies, where the entire show they're dressed up in drag in order to stay at this all-women's apartment.
Right.
Like, this is a joke. Flip Wilson used to dress in drag all the time in his shows, and Flip Wilson was very popular. He was one of the most popular black freaking entertainers at the time.
Yeah.
Flip Wilson. This happens all the time. It's just bizarre. Have you heard of Dennis Rodman? What are they talking about? But go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, you're saying it perfectly. It was part of our culture, and there was a point when you just thought, like, oh God, RuPaul's Drag Race is one of the #1 shows. It's so mainstream now. But then when I saw Nancy Pelosi walk out on RuPaul's Drag Race, I thought, oh no, this is one of the least popular politicians in our lifetimes is going to ruin drag and make it political, and it should not be in the sense of blue versus red. The thread you're showing, we just celebrated Pride Month, and what was that about? Pride Month was based on the commemoration of the Stonewall riots, and it was black and brown trans women at the front of the lines, literally, physically fighting police for 3 days because they couldn't take it anymore. Read the thread that I did. They were radical. They, in handcuffs, ran away in heels, getting chased by police down the streets. This was a radical movement. And what some erudite people on my thread pointed out, there were a lot of anti-war activists in the queer community at that time involved with Stonewall, as well as communists. It was a big thing. And you know what happened is, I kind of made a comparison to this. You know, George Floyd was executed in broad daylight by police, right? It was an extrajudicial killing. And next thing you know, we see Pelosi and company kneeling in kente cloth.
Mm-hmm.
They did nothing about getting rid of qualified immunity. They gave $37 billion more to the police. They're doing the same thing with the queer community. Democrats don't care about trans lives. Now, there may be Democratic voters who personally do, but the party doesn't. They are virtue signaling. They have the opportunity to pass trans protections and put it in the marriage equality bill, and Democrats who ran the House at the time took it out. So they don't care. My only message, and I think this was the takeaway to other leftists, is don't fall for the culture war. But I have heard too many leftists, some who I like and respect, talk about groomers. Listen, drag queens reading age-appropriate books to 5-year-olds are not groomers. This has been going on for years. Nobody had a problem with it until a bunch of horrible Republicans that don't have literally any solutions to our problems decided to make the culture war an issue. And of course the Democrats love that, because then they don't have to defend their shitty record on the economy, their shitty record on censorship, their shitty record on peace issues in the world, right? Because they can't defend it. So it's this thing. My concern is queer people getting thrown under the bus. Violence against the queer community is on the rise. People's lives are literally at stake. And you, and I'm talking to any leftist out there, don't think for a minute you can have a revolution, political or otherwise, and throw the queer community under the bus. You need them. And stop it. Stop. It should not be a political issue. What somebody wants to do with their body, we say it for reproductive rights. We need to say it for trans rights. It's a personal issue. And the fact that any leftist is getting caught up in this means you're not talking about class issues. I had a post a few weeks back at the beginning of Pride, and I said, I put a picture of Nancy Pelosi in a Pride parade waving a rainbow flag. And I'm like, nice that you're waving the rainbow flag, but you know what? People in the queer community also need housing, medical care, a living wage. It is a working class issue. And it does hurt me, but I will say this. Anna and Cenk are disgusting human beings. They are not good people. This isn't just a political difference. But I have to also say, I love Jimmy Dore's critique of the Democrats, but he also is making fun of trans issues because I get it. He doesn't completely understand it. So here's my ask. Because I don't know that there's a better critic, except for you guys, of the Democratic Party out there than Jimmy Dore. Doesn't mean I agree with everything he says, but there's nobody else with that size platform that's criticizing and holding Dems accountable the way he does. And I appreciate that work. Let's leave the trans issue out of it. We don't need to talk about it in this context. We need to talk about working class issues, environmental issues, and peace issues. That's my take. And it is a near and dear issue to my heart. But, you know, I've marched with ACT UP in the 90s. These are people who walked into St. Patrick's Cathedral and spit communion out in the priest's face because queer lives were at stake. They are radical. They are willing to fight. And mostly they're working class. And I mentioned this in my post, and I'll just end on this. Trans youth are more likely to be homeless than almost any other group. We should be drawing the circle bigger and getting out of this whole language of grooming and all that bullshit. We need a working. I'm so excited about Cornel West for this reason. And by the way, he doesn't focus on that issue, but when he talks about it, he talks about his trans brothers and sisters and queer brothers and sisters. He brings them into the circle. He draws the circle bigger. He's the only candidate that really, I think, means it. But I will fight anybody who thinks they can throw a part of the working class under the bus because they don't understand it. It's just my perspective. So let's get out.
Spot on.
It's
spot on. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah. So much good stuff said there. Especially like I had this conversation before. I gotta find that podcast I did a few weeks ago where I think it's interesting. And now this is why I'm hurt few people's feelings, but these people don't care about hurting people's feelings, so who cares? These are people who relentlessly go after trans people and call them groomers. And I'm like, how many of you guys are Catholic saying this?
Right.
So you guys want to talk real? You guys want to get real now? You want to do facts over your feelings? Because I can do that too. I don't mention this because I think it's divisive. I don't mention religion. It's a divisive issue. So why don't they realize they doing the same regarding people's sexuality? So if you want to talk about divisive issues, let's talk about one. They shoot part of religion that is one of the biggest organizations of child sex trafficking in human history. You guys okay with that? But you guys want us to be turned off and disgusted by the LGBT community over weird allegations of grooming? And then a lot of these people are like, I support the blue. I support the military. Who kills more kids in the fucking military? Who sexually assaults more kids in the military than the police? You guys support organizations that destroy children. So do not buy the narrative that these people on the right care about the children. They said that in the 80s when they first started their anti-gay crusade. They always use children because they know that's a hot button point. But they don't care about the fucking kids because they will walk over a homeless kid in a second. They will charge a kid and make them have student lunch debt. These people got a society where kids have fucking student lunch debt. But you guys think they care about the kids? No, they use that to divide you. And that's why I roll my eyes when people think they actually care about the kids and they calling other people groomers when they support the biggest organizations of child sexual violence and militaristic, actually just fucking straight out bloodthirsty violence against children when it comes to the U.S. military, when it comes for the Catholic religion. And once again, I'm not trying to hurt anyone's fucking feelings. I'm telling the truth. I'm telling the goddamn truth. Your guys' last pope helped and abetted child sex trafficking. And I'm not talking about small organization. I'm talking about the highest fucking person. But you guys calling the LGBTQ community groomers fucking miss me with that shit. Miss me with that divisive garbage. I'm not falling for it. And the people who push it, the people who care about it, they fell for it. And some of them think they're woke, but they're not. A lot of them think they're edgy and anti-establishment. I'm edgy and anti-establishment when I talk about LGBT. You're doing exactly what the establishment wants you to do. And you're not special. You're not edgy. You follow in their direction. Anyway, that's my last round on that. CJ,
all right.
Colin.
Yeah, let me bring up the banner real quick just so everybody knows what we're going to be talking about today. There's actually a lot of topics we're going to fly through because there's some small ones, shorter ones, I should say. But looking at the graphic, we played the video already, or part of the video. Donald Trump has raised $35 million after indictment. So the indictment is backfiring. It has a boomerang effect. Like literally, that's astonishing. 35 million is this what he just recorded. And then, of course, we're going to talk about, after the next story is going to be Cornel West and the Nation, of all people. They were good at a point, I heard. But the Nation is telling Cornel West to run as a Democrat. Then we're going to get to Joe Biden. That's the reason you see Joe Biden and Putin on there. Joe Biden has approved cluster munition to be sent to Ukraine. So we'll be talking about that story. Well, and then a quicker story will be the Ro Khanna story. I'll take this down now. The Ro Khanna story. Ro Khanna is proposing 18-year term limits for Supreme Court justices. It's a bill that literally is not going to go anywhere. This is what they do when the other people are in power. They pull up a bunch of bills and name them some great names so they can use them for campaigns. So these are the stories. I do want to get to what is mowing the lawn in Israeli terms. I do want to get to that as a video. And Nick, I want to squeeze in Marianne Williamson loses more staff, even if we just read a couple of paragraphs from that article, if you have it. And then is there one more UPS strike update? We'll get to that. These are all shorter videos. So I know it sounds like a lot, but we should be able to get through most of it. I don't see any super chats. So let's just squeeze in this topic right here. This is the Nation. Cornel West should run as a Democrat. And needless to say, and I gotta say, everybody, Nick, Anthony, Colin, it puts a smile on my face that they are getting ratioed to oblivion by so many people here. It is just a beautiful thing to see. Have any of you seen this, or have you been one of the people that have?
Yeah, I'm gonna show you this.
Ratioed them. Go ahead, Nick.
Since you mentioned it, I don't know if this guy wrote the article, but he's editor of the Nation.
Yeah, he's one of the writers too. Yes, DD, I think his name is.
And they follow me for whatever fuck reason, right? Listen, easily ratio, not even trying, easily, not even trying here. Ratio, because I asked this a very basic question that destroys the entire premise of the article. Why should he run in a rigged primary? And I think their attempts to get Dr. Cornel West to run as a Democrat it serves multiple purposes. You guys want to know one of the most malicious and devious purposes it serves? Their job is to do what? It's to give the illusion that change is possible within the Democratic Party. So their job is not to learn from mistakes. So they're telling Dr. Cornel West to run the Democratic Party because they were trying to overwrite history and trying to make you guys forget about the fact that the primaries are rigged. Yeah, we just saw the Democrats rig the primary from Bernie Sanders, but they want the left to be dumb and inefficient. Remember, CJ? They want a dumb left that has a memory of a goldfish, that doesn't learn from lessons, and to continue to march the direction to the PMCs. That's exactly what this is about. I'll put your screen back up because I'll just show you guys the easy ratio you get from calling people out. Asking the basic question: why should he run in a primary that's fucking rigged? Doesn't make sense. But go ahead, panel.
Colin, Anthony, any thoughts? Have you responded to this thread in particular? And if you did, let us know what you said. But any thoughts beyond that?
I seen it. Didn't respond to it, but of course we know. Well, you know what? I'll give the Nation some credit. At least it seems like it's somewhat more favorable, slightly more favorable coverage compared to what Marianne Williamson has been getting, and even RFK right now. But yeah, it's just another way, as Nick said, to just kind of, it's just buying on people being extremely forgetful or more likely fearful. I think that's more accurate in terms of we got to protect people from the boogeyman that is the Democratic Party / Trump or whoever ends up being winning the primary. That they're going to use this as a foil just to kind of not have the idea of even speaking in terms of having an alternate party outside of duopoly ever happen. So, so it's the idea. Yeah, so I think that's mostly it because, Dr. West has the name, he has the popularity, and at least even if people will not necessarily vote for him, he has enough star power that at least people will kind of be like, interesting. Why is Cornel doing this? Why is he willing to campaign outside of the Democratic or Republican Party? Let me look into this anymore. So it's just a way for the mainstream media to kind of, try to shift the conversation back to their favor in terms of having people just be so embedded and not thinking critically in terms of even just thinking about the possibility of doing something alternative of what we've been doing forever. So it's just, and I've talked to many people about this, and again, it's a lot of theory that they like the idea of what Dr. West is doing. But in practice, they're just, when it comes to them actually doing it, it's just kind of like, I don't know if that's such a good idea because, and again, they kind of bring in the fear aspect. Right. It's to bring in the fear aspect of we have to do that. I don't particularly like the Democrats, but we don't have a choice, like even though they suck, but the Republicans are way worse. So it's just a lot of fear-based rhetoric. And
look at this quote here because I didn't actually read the article yet. This is hilarious. Big shout out to Do Dissidents, our brothers at the Post Duopolies Left show. That will be back next Monday, I believe.
Yes.
Do Dissidents says, I think as a spoiler, this is from the article to back up what Colin's saying. It's actually worse because this is from the article. Holy shit. Acting as a spoiler in a close race is the closest a third-party candidate can come to relevancy. You see, no conversation about movement building. But anyway, let's continue. And if Donald Trump remains in serious contention next year, that's a risk no progressive can dismiss. This is the PMC left, guys. So Do Distance says, so really, this article endorses Biden for re-election. It's literally a pro-Democrat article.
Right.
Unbelievable.
The whole argument of saying you should run as a Democrat, just think about the logic. These people have degrees, and I like to point out their degrees when they make these stupid arguments because you're pointing out your education didn't teach you much. That's the joke I'm trying to point out, because you know that this is rigged. This is rigged. Whatever, if you don't want to use the language rigged, you know it's heavily favored for the incumbent. So you say, hey, guy who's great candidate, come run over here in this race. We already know who's going to win. What are you really saying? You're saying we need your candidacy to end at a certain point and Joe Biden to pick up, because that's eventually the end game. Go ahead.
They want legitimacy in terms of having Dr. West go in the Democrat. But that's really all it is they want another person to go for the Democratic Party. So when they fail, that it's another person, Dr. West, who has, I would say, not sure how much of the black contingent he has, but he's popular. But him being able to say, to give the endorsement of, we need to vote for Joe Biden. That's what they're looking for, So go ahead.
Look at the term relevancy. What does that even mean? He said the closest a third-party candidate can come to relevancy. So what does being relevant mean to you? Because the DNC said they are not having debates, right? And also, who's more relevant in October? The Democrat candidate that dropped out of the race, or the third-party candidate that's still actually in the narrative, that's part of the conversation, that's actually running for president?
And that is the ridiculousness.
You're giving up. You're giving up before Super Tuesday. I'm telling you guys, they're going to give up around Super Tuesday, and they think they're more relevant? And what does this mean in their mindset? So what does relevant mean? Being relevant means being a pawn of the Democratic Party. Right. You're not relevant unless you're part of the effort to defeat Donald Trump. So if you run in the Democratic primary, no matter if you lose in embarrassing fashion, if you're part of the coalition to defeat Trump, you're relevant. Really revealing this part of the article. Go ahead.
They're basically trying to act like the wedding dress rehearsal is the more important thing than showing up at the wedding. Specifically what they're saying, like the primary, you're more relevant when you're going against Democrats, and you're going against the general election. It's a preposterous, illogical argument. But go ahead, Anthony. You were going to chime in.
Yeah, go ahead, Zinkas.
Everything you guys said, and I Sabby's got it right. I think I chimed in and said basically the same thing. The article literally said you need to stand on the debate stage, and challenge and defend your position. They're not letting people on it. There's no debate stage. They're not having debates. So listen, they don't know what to do with Cornel West. It's not. I have a lot of respect for Jill Stein, and I always get his first name
Ajamu Baraka.
Thank you, Mr. Baraka. Ajamu Baraka. Who's just also brilliant. They didn't have the name recognition before. And when Jill Stein got the name recognition, not her fault, it was as like, you're the reason Trump became president, as if she's, powerful. Cornel West has been on every major cable news network. He's authored books, written the forward to critical race theory, but he's also the only candidate Maybe Bernie did. I don't know. But the only candidate that I know in my lifetime who's like literally gotten arrested back in the 80s protesting South African apartheid. I mean, this guy
got arrested for Ferguson too. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean, all the way up until Ferguson, he's been arrested multiple times. He walks the walk. They don't know what to do with him because they do like him, or they like having him on. His perspective is consistent with the virtue signaling of the Democrats, which is we care about Black lives. As Nick so eloquently pointed out before, they do not care about Black lives. Let me just say this. If you agree and you I don't know if you can still hear me. If you agree and are in sync with U.S. foreign policy, you are in sync with white supremacy, because our foreign policy is white supremacist foreign policy. There's no doubt about it. We love to bomb brown and Black people. They don't know what to do with Cornel West. The nation is freaking out because they're supposed to be one of the vanguards of real leftism. There were times when they were. They are not that now. Joan Walsh is not that. They're all establishment shills, and they don't want to outwardly criticize West for his points, his policy points, because they can't. There's no defense for what they're doing and what he's criticizing in the duopoly, specifically, between Democrats and Republicans. For decades and decades, inequality has gone up, civil rights have gone down. The environment has gotten worse. Like every metric you can look at, because of Democrat-Republican two-party duopoly control, has gotten worse. He's naming the monster, and they don't like it. But they can't outwardly attack him and say he's a bad person, although some people on Twitter do. So they're like, you should run as a Democrat. Mm-hmm. They want to silence him and his supporters. I have seen, I think he's had I saw two at-length interviews on your network, CJ and Nick, which were excellent, with Dr. West, and a bunch of other interviews. He's not backing down. They are freaking out. They don't know what to do. And I want somebody who says the crazy thoughts that I have when I hear somebody way smarter than me say it. I'm like, I'm not alone here. I get it. They get it. He also made an important point. Why now? And his answer was, we don't have the time to wait. Do people realize what's happening with the environment? Do people realize what's happening? Life expectancy in the U.S. went down. We're on the brink of World War III. Climate catastrophes around the corner. We don't have the time for more broken promises. He said it. And he said, if I don't make it all the way, I will go down fighting. We will go down fighting. I think this candidacy is transformational. I said it last time we talked about it. It will be interesting to see how they move forward. They cannot completely ignore him, because the look won't be good for those virtue signaling people who put up the BLM banners on their profile, right? They can't, so they don't know what to do. So they want to wedge him into the Democratic Party. He's not going to do it because he's not an idiot. I'm sure.
They're begging him to. They're begging him to.
Like, my last thing with that, I'm sure Dr. West, who's a very deliberate, he's a philosopher. I'm sure he thought all of this out before coming out with a public decision. I trust him.
But he's built up a track record where I think he's going to be able to sustain a lot of the attacks, and they're just not going to land because he hasn't been in politics, and because he can be seen on all of their networks, them bringing him on, from Anderson Cooper to Cuomo to, I remember Don Lemon had him on. Everybody would bring on Cornel West. But let me read Sabby's tweet. The outlet has become just another DNC shield, and she's right. What debate stage? The DNC already said there will be no primary debates. Dr. West has already had corporate media coverage. stop lying. This argument that you're going to be irrelevant, Marianne Williamson too. If you're really, because they're talking about Cornel West and they're way more fearful of Cornel West than any of the candidates. I'm not going to say any. They're fearful of Robert F. K. Jr. also, but they act like Cornel West has not been getting the coverage. You're writing about him, the nation. You're writing about him yourself. What are you talking about? It's just the critique falls flat. And there was another one I wanted to show, a couple of other ones I wanted to show. What stupid, horrible advice. The DNC has admitted the primaries are a fraud. Why the fuck would West do this knowing full well he will, one, never get the nomination, and two, would be expected to give fealty to the selected corporate candidate, basically meaning he will be forced to have to endorse him. And that is another great point. And I do want to bring up the article just so we can read a couple of paragraphs, because it's pretty terrible, Nick. And I'm sure you probably go back later and read some of it, because we're not going to read all of it right here. But it's pretty terrible. Let me scroll all the way up so you can see the graphic and the title. Cornel West should run as a Democrat. And then the subtitle, if he wants to go beyond preaching to the converted, he needs to take his socialist politics into the Democratic primary. And this is written by, and that's the guy you saw, Nick, the D.D. Gettenplan. He is the editor. And then I always say his name right, but this is the guy from Bernie Sanders. He's also the founding editor of Jacobin, which is not surprising. He's the founding editor of Jacobin, and they've come out with a lot of the same sort of headlines. I think one of their bad headlines was "Don't run" or something like that, or Cornel West has no business running. That's from Jacobin, the guy who also founded that, founding editor. He also wrote this. Now, let me go down to a couple of things they say here, and I'll get everybody's reaction. And it's, hang on one second, down here. There goes the pop-up starting. So is the pop-up going away? There we go. So let's read here. This is how they describe him. Instead of taking his bat and ball and retreating, I'm sorry, let me back up to give context to that last line there. I'll start here. There is, however, an available arena where West could still provide useful pressure by laying out the left alternative to Bidenism, the Democratic primaries. On a debate stage, at campaign rallies, and in national media coverage, West, with his prophetic voice and moral clarity, like Sanders in 2016 and 2020, could accomplish a great deal. And I think they're falling short of being specific about what accomplishments. It's just kind of talking. That's what the professional managerial class has now set up, sort of a goalpost. As long as you got your narrative in, you got to say some stuff. That's all they want. Go ahead, Colin, if you want.
No, that's exactly it. It's just, we want you there to talk about the issues, but we'll be damned to actually. That's exactly what Crystal Ball was saying in regards to Marianne and some of these other channels. It's like, oh, it's important that even though she won't win, it's important that she's there to talk about these socialist / progressive values, to kind of fill in that void within the establishment. Like, it means nothing if they're not going to follow through on any of it. And they know that's not going to happen. So just talk. And again, we've gone through this with Bernie for the past 8 years. We've gone past the situation of just talking. We need action at this point. And so it's just, again, kind of going off the idea of people having brains of flies and not remembering how they did Bernie dirty in the last 2 elections, and thinking like, oh, we can try to do the same thing with West and have it be different this time.
Yeah. And I'll continue with the article. Let me know. I can't see you, so you guys interrupt me whenever you want to chime in. Instead of taking his bat and ball and retreating to the margins, that's how they describe running as a Green Party candidate. Instead of taking his bat and ball and retreating to the margins, we believe West should seek out the the truly national stage, that running as a Democrat would bring.
No debates, though. No debates.
Good Lord. Good Lord. And they don't acknowledge that at all, that the Democratic Party in this article, they don't acknowledge that. Instead of letting RFK
Isn't that a lie
Jr.
by omission? Aren't they lying to their audience by omission?
Mhm.
By omitting that?
That is a great point.
Go ahead, CJ.
Instead of letting RFK Jr. leverage his family name and his following as an anti-vax crusader,
You gotta see that's his title. That's his title. Like you want him to run in the war criminal capitalist Democratic Party. Like that's the title that you support. Anyway, sorry, go ahead, CJ.
West should mount a real one, offering the radical solutions he's always championing, including on war and peace, and which we believe this country desperately needs. Such a campaign would be good for the country and for the Democratic Party.
Of that? Sorry, CJ, but what's the evidence?
There is none.
You gotta see how this is just an evidence-free article. This is vibes. Oh, this is an article written just on vibes. No evidence of that because we had two Bernie campaigns. The largest progressive campaigns that we ever seen. And the Democratic Party as far right as they ever been. So what's the evidence of your statement here? That such a campaign be good for a country? I will argue that those campaigns are not good for the country because she purges people into these corrupt, evil parties like the Democrats. So let's continue.
Listen to this line. Running as a Democrat would transform West's candidacy. This is what it is now. This is what they're from a sterile exercise into a vehicle for redeeming our politics from the corporate complacency and soul-crushing cynicism about Democratic politics that serve only those already in power. That sounds like a bunch of college degree mumbo jumbo that says nothing. Go ahead.
No, exactly what I said earlier. This is like the theoretical aspect of doing politics in this way versus like the practical aspect of it. So it's like they're all for the theoretical if they don't have to do anything. So, and the thing is, and Anthony, you probably know this well, like the idea of theory is that it has to be tested. So let's see how far that Cornel West can go in terms of running for the Green Party. Now, if that fails, that you can make that argument. But they're going in with the idea of, oh, this can't work because he's doing this on the theoretical side in terms of, I like the idea of having, alternate parties, but in practice, that's not going to work. Or at least in practice, it's not going to work right now. The argument that I make is that most voters at this point are independent. So if you're going to try and do this I don't even want to call it an experiment, but for the sake of them, let's call it an experiment. Shouldn't people who are independent have a voice within the duopoly that could be, we can work to make it a viable thing? Yeah, the idea of Cornel West being president is not going to be a likely thing, but at least the idea can start growing in terms of how feasible it is. Can it be for an alternate party that is apart from the establishment, can actually force, both parties to actually do something, or better, to actually bring a more, a party that is actually tied to labor to arise in the coming years. That's the kind of work that we should be doing right now. So to me, it's the idea of the environment is right for it and ready for it. So it's a question of people who are willing to put in the work. And as you were saying before, CJ, it's just the idea of people, they're just lazy. A lot of these PMCs are just wanting to sit back behind their degrees, or in our case, behind their computer screens and behind their desks to talk to us about, no, this is the way, it cannot work this way because of X, Y, and Z, versus trying to get out on the streets or going in labor and actually trying to figure out what are the means that we need to start doing? What should we be doing right now to make an alternate party viable? This, if they did this as far as this article, that would be one thing. But instead, it's like, oh, this can't work because it's not done in the normal way that we're kind of used to. So we're going to smear but not smear Dr. West because he's doing something that's allegedly an experiment versus actually trying to see what can be viable in terms of thinking in the future of what will possibly work to have people come out of the duopoly at this point.
I want to highlight this part here, and I'll pass it to you, CJ. Running as a Democrat will transform West's candidate from a sterile exercise into a vehicle for redeeming our politics from corporate complacency. And check this, soul-crushing cynicism. Who the biggest cynic? Who the biggest cynic in politics right now? It's these people.
Yes.
These are the people that say we have no power. We must kneel to the war criminal imperialist Democratic Party. The biggest cynic there is are these people. The biggest nihilists are these people. But he's criticizing the Democratic Party for having soul-crushing, cynical politics, but he's perpetuating that. Remember what I told you guys? Who's the biggest obstacle to third parties? You think it's Nancy Pelosi? You think it's Chuck Schumer? You think it's one of the most unpopular politicians? You think Nancy Pelosi's charisma is stopping a third party? No. The biggest obstacle are these people who have audiences that's on the verge, that's on the edge of transitioning out of the two-party duopoly. And right when they start thinking like, man, I really think this two-party duopoly is bullshit. Joe Biden don't got my best interest at heart. Maybe we should have a third-party campaign. Right when they about to flip, some PMC fuck comes out and say, no, they're not a good idea. And once again, they're not as educated as we are. They're not as radical as we are. So they trust them. So right as they about to flip and start to support third parties, they read this article from The Nation. They hear Crystal Ball tell him to grow up. And he's like, maybe I should grow up, man. I thought I was about to support third parties, but Crystal Ball told me to grow up, so I can't do it no more. And that's what happened. They're the biggest obstacle towards third parties are these people.
They are.
Like, go ahead, CJ,
and that's to your point. I'll bring up my tweet in a second, but I made this point, a similar point, that these are the white moderates that some black radicals have referred to as white moderates. And we have to update it. I would change the word from moderate and liberal to progressive and eliminate white, because now it's just everybody. It's the PMC. Right. It's the PMC progressive that is now playing that role. And what I want to zero in, Nick, you zeroed in on the sentence right before this one, and I didn't get to finish earlier. In short, so all of what they say here, running as a Democrat would transform West's candidacy from sterile exercise into a vehicle for redeeming our politics from the corporate complacency and soul-crushing cynicism about Democratic politics. In short, they mean it would be the act of a serious man. Essentially, he's not serious running as a third-party candidate. I mean, to me, this is great, because these people, when I'm saying the professional managerial left, they've been all this time when we didn't have a good candidate, Nick and Colin and Anthony, when we didn't have a good candidate, when our best candidate was the Minnesota governor, I forget his name, the Minnesota governor, when that was like the best of our hope. There was always, if we just had a candidate, if we just had a candidate, we would all for it. Remember Kyle Kalinske? Yep. He never added this other caveat. Well, we have passed the post voting now. This is new. Because
remember when Dr. Cornel West? Sorry, CJ, to interrupt.
No, go ahead if you want to interject.
Remember when he was running as a People's Party candidate, and it was like, if only he ran as a Green, because they didn't think it was going to happen. We got the inside scoop, and we was just cracking up the whole time while they were saying this shit. Like, he ran as a Green Party. Now he ran as a Green Party candidate. Now they were forced to show their hands. But sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Anthony. I think Anthony was going to chime in. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. How dare you, nation? How dare you suggest that one of the most consistent, educated, radical voices for racial and economic justice of our lifetimes could ever not be considered a serious man? How dare you, nation? Who's that journalist? What a piece of living garbage.
He's the editor. He's the editor of the Nation right now.
They'll never go on RBN. I would debate that idiot. How dare you? And I don't know their racial, ethnic identity or anything. But they're propping up white supremacy with this article.
Yes.
Look, I'm white. I walk in this white body. I know what I got. I know my privilege. And I know people are suffering. And and it's not just about race, but we have somebody who can literally articulate in the most, my God, poetic way. Cornel West speaks. And it's, he talks about jazz. I love when he talks about music. But he speaks, he's so educated, but he speaks in a way anybody can listen. And if you have a heart and a brain, it resonates. Why would there be deep-rooted cynicism, whoever you are that wrote this stupid article, opinion piece? I wonder why there's deep-rooted cynicism. Could it be that Democrats literally decided to leave the minimum wage at $7.25 an hour during record inflation? Could that be why people are cynical? Could it be that Joe Biden promised a public option, which I think is inadequate, but would be better than not having it? Could that be why people are cynical? Because he's never brought it up once since he was nominated. Could it be that we're cynical because police keep assassinating and murdering Black and brown bodies and nothing is done about it? Could that be why we're cynical? We're on the brink of World War III. Would you like to go down the list? Twice in the past month, I live in New York, we had breathing air quality alerts because of the Canadian wildfires. Our climate is fucked up. Why are people cynical? They're afraid. Cornel West, and look, I don't do hero worship. I'm sure there's going to be a couple of things he says that I'm like, I don't know if I would have said it that way, or I don't agree. And that's fine. Nobody, unless you're brain dead, is going to agree with every single thing somebody says. But Cornel West articulates exactly why he's running third party. The duopoly not only has failed, not only are the Democrats a useless opposition, in name only, they are in opposition to the Republicans. See, listen, I get shit all the time on my profile. I don't really care because it's Twitter. But I get shit all the time on my profile. Like, why don't you ever call out the Republicans?
Yeah.
My whole thing is this. I hate the Republicans. I don't hate people that vote Republican. I know people who do. And we end up agreeing, like, on Medicare for all. I'm like, just be independent, right? Vote green. But the party is disgusting. But we need a true opposition to the Republican Party. Democrats have shown they are not willing to be in opposition. Oh, the parliamentarians said we couldn't have a minimum wage increase. Are you fucking kidding me? People are literally making the choice between, like, putting gas in their car, putting groceries on their table, or getting evicted. And the Democrats couldn't even push through a vote. Pelosi wouldn't allow it on the eviction moratorium because they knew it would fail, because Democrats take money from the real estate industry. This is an existential threat to people's lives. Why are we cynical? Democrats are not, and this is what Cornel West is articulating, they're not a serious, there's that Nick word, they are not a serious opposition to the Republican Party. And what do both parties, especially the Republicans, stand for? Is it fascism? It's fascist, Christo-authoritarian capitalism and imperialism and colonialism. That's what both parties stand for. The Republicans are more open about it, right? So we don't have time. West is literally saying we've got to have this conversation now. And by the way, I am just going to throw this out. Cornel West absolutely could win the presidency. I'll make a prediction here. Who cares? I'm nobody with whatever it comes to, like, politics. But the bottom line is, I don't think Joe Biden is going to be the nominee. I can see a scenario. Joe Biden is not well. Joe Biden is cognitively unwell. And it affects, when you understand what dementia, he has dementia. I'm not diagnosing. I get these letters written like, you don't have any right to diagnose. I'm not a doctor. I know I've witnessed. I'm a social worker. I've witnessed people with dementia, early, middle, and late stage. Joe Biden has dementia. It's undoubtable to me. He's not. I don't believe he'll be the nominee. I don't. I think they need a plan B, and they don't know what to do. It can't be Kamala.
Right. That's the reason why they don't know what to do. Newsom is the person that the establishment and the people with money want to go after and have him. That's the reason why he's out campaigning now so vigorously. But go ahead.
Just to throw this out, what you just said, CJ Newsom, if Biden, and by the way, I don't wish him ill. He's a human being. I wish he would just retire because, like, enjoy your life, right? Whatever you have left of it. But the point is, can you imagine if Biden can't for physical reasons, right? Because he's 80 years old. The actuarial tables are pretty clear. At that age, the likelihood that he could have a serious issue that could sideline his ability to do his job or get higher every year. Can you imagine if they tried to push Newsom on us while Cornel West was in the race for Greens? My God. So my point is, it's anybody's game. Like, how many points? What did Clinton get when he ran in 92 and won? Because Ross Perot was third party. Clinton didn't. He got a plurality, but he didn't get a majority. He got like 40-something% of the vote.
A high 40, yeah, I remember. I don't know what it was, but
might have been 42. But the point is, but it doesn't matter. And I just want to end with, like, it doesn't matter if he doesn't win. I'm just saying nobody can predict what's going to happen. Nobody thought Trump. I thought he had a shot. Nobody thought Trump was going to win. But this candidacy is important. We cannot wait to call and name the problem. I said this in the beginning with trans and queer rights, all our problems, all our grievances are connected. Cornel West is the only candidate that articulates that.
Absolutely. Let me read these last two and we can close this segment. And then, Nick, if you want to prepare your main story, this is one of the stories we're going to have, but you called it your main story, so you know what I'm talking about. If you want to prepare that, we can do that next. Let me read this part because it encompasses the headline or what we talked about earlier. He announced his campaign as a nominee for the tiny scandal-plagued People's Party, which has ballot access in only Florida.
The Democratic Party is not scandal-plagued.
Yes.
The Democratic Party is scandal-free, pristine democracy at the Democratic Party. Go ahead.
Then he moved his candidacy to the Green, but the Greens, who seem to have welcomed West with open arms, aren't much of an improvement with ballot access in only 15 states. Now, here's where they're lying. Because they know damn well that what the Greens does is that they have like a certain set that they never go under. Because the threshold to get on the ballot is literally real low. So it's always you start out 18, but they know damn well that the Green Party will be on 40 some odd state ballots. Right. They know that, but they're trying to act like it's not that much better. But let me finish. Though the party does have a long history in Europe, the U.S. Green Party reached its peak in 2000 when Nader won almost 3 million votes for president, and has been blamed by mainstream pundits ever since for the failure of Al Gore's dismal campaign. The reason for West's choice is clear. In our hardly democratic two-party system, acting as a spoiler in a close race is the closest a third-party candidate can come to relevancy, and if Donald Trump remains the serious contention next year, that is a risk no progressive can dismiss. This is vote blue no matter who. I don't know how this is vote blue no matter who, but let me say this part, and I'll pass it to you, Nick, for any final words. Anybody else that want to comment on this? What I was gonna say. The third party candidacy and running. I forgot what I was gonna say. So I'll go to you, Nick, and then see if I jog my memory here.
But that article was just a vote blue ad, and all these people who was pretending to be radical during the first Trump presidency term, and during the Joe Biden first 2 years, during Bernie Sanders, like we're gonna watch them revert to their true core role, and they're gonna be exposed, and they're gonna have no choice. That's why the whole Cornel West situation is interesting, because we saw someone who gave them a head fake and almost played 3D chess in a way, where he forced them to show their hand first, where he announced as a People Party candidate. That actually was a brilliant move in terms of coverage, right? Because now everyone was forced to say, oh man, if only if he wasn't a People's Party candidate. Now he revealed he's a Green Party candidate. Now people are forced to reveal their hand, that their number one concern is to make sure Democrats don't lose. That is not the voice of the proletariat. He mentioned how the mainstream pundits was criticizing the third party candidate for costing the Democrats the election. Why are you concerned about the opinions of a mainstream pundit instead of the proletariat? Like that article is full of tales. Article full of tales. Who pins we value most? What club you want to be a part in? It's very obvious. That article is not speaking to us. I want us at RBN to realize who are these PMCs speaking to, and it's not us at all. And I have two quick stories, but go ahead, CJ, and we ain't calling.
Let me add this part. I did remember what I was going to say now. And that is, this Trump is bad. That's no longer an effective selling point, and that's what they think they're going to do. Well, you're going to elect Trump. Do you think you're going to siphon votes away to elect Trump? And my answer would be, and what is your point? Like, right. What is the point? Because it is still this sort of narrative they're trying to play that everybody is about stopping Trump. And I'm just saying that's not my top goal. That's not my priority. Stopping Trump is no more important than stopping Biden to me. It's the same task. So that is no longer a selling point, because we've lived through a Trump presidency. We've lived through a Joe Biden presidency. Joe Biden presidency is unequivocally worse. It is a worse presidency. Listen, the story Nick is about to do, the cluster munitions right there, moving us to a nuclear war right there. Forget the inflation. Forget the increased military budget. Forget marching us to war with China and Russia at the same time. Forget all of that. Forget the censorship. Just on marching us to nuclear war, just that alone makes Donald Trump the lesser of the two evils. And I'm not saying that to say I'm going to vote for him. I'm going all the way in. Green Party voting again, of course, with Cornel West. But this is no longer a selling point. And that's my final words on this topic.
Colin, any last thoughts before I move on?
Yeah, very real quick. Trump would not be an issue if the Democrats did what they were supposed to do. Mm-hmm. Point blank, period.
Absolutely.
And the bar was low. So you didn't give people, you didn't give people a $15 minimum wage. You somehow allowed the child tax credit to go to tank that. You fucked up on regards to student loan forgiveness. There wasn't a lot that people were asking for. People were basically asking for competency. And if you were able to do at minimum maybe at least one of those things, Trump will not be an issue right now. But Trump is an issue right now because you can only blame the Democrats for that. And these are the same people who are going to ask you, we know like what they didn't do, but we need to vote for the Democrats again because Trump. And as you said, CJ, and I think especially for most of us who are Black, it really doesn't matter who's going to be president. And I know you said this, Nick, like we're not, especially when you're thinking on local level, like the federal government doesn't scare us, but the cops do. The fact that we're not having enough money scares us, most people probably more than anything else. So it doesn't matter who president is, especially within the duopoly. We're fucked regardless. So it scares the PMCs because it will actually force them to be accountable somewhat of, we have this bastard in government now, so we got to do whatever we can to stop it. Like, as I say, everyone becomes Malcolm X when the Republican is in office. you know, but you don't hold the same accountability. You don't hold that same type of weight when your own is in office. And so, as you kind of say all the time, it's the idea of consistency. If you're going to have that same heat for Trump, rightly so, then you should have the same heat for the Democrats. And I don't see that. So,
no, they cheerlead them in articles. They write articles to get you to support them. That's what that article is.
Right. So,
Democrats.
You know, so anyone who is out here in these streets trying to live their lives and they can't because they're not making the finances that they're supposed to, that they're thinking about their kids in a way that we shouldn't have to even worry about, if they're thinking about how they're going to pay for this surgery or whatever it means if they can't afford to go, like having these two people in office is really not going to do much for people if they're really struggling. So it doesn't, like the idea of having Trump in office does not scare me.
That means nothing now. Like, what does? If you support third party, you're gonna give it Trump. Okay, blame me. I want you to reflect on the fact that you lost enough votes to get Trump elected. I want to be part of the equation. Blame me, right?
And then blame us, and then we can tell you why.
Right. Hey, there's an article, I just pulled it up, from 2016, less than 2 weeks after Trump was elected. In the New York Times, paper of record, liberals who like the New York Times, it's titled, "Many in Milwaukee neighborhood didn't vote and don't regret it."
Yeah.
The Milwaukee neighborhood they visited was a mostly black neighborhood. Where did they go? A barber shop. And they interviewed men in the barbershop. Granted, it was a small sample of people, but they just walked up. So I'm just going to read a little bit of it for those that...
I remember that.
Read this article. One of them said, they admitted they talked about, oh no, Trump is president. And one guy called him a literal gangster. And then he says, they admitted that they could not complain too much. Only a couple of them voted, but there were no regrets. Quote, says a man named Mr. Fleming, "I don't feel bad about not voting. Milwaukee is tired. Both of them were terrible. They never do anything for us anyway."
Yes.
So if people think it's just RBN or crazy Professor Zenkis or Cornel West being pie in the sky, no, it's real people who know our lives are not materially better. I will say at the state level, Republicans especially, well, not only down south, some in Midwest, are doing some really, going back to the queer community, some really dangerous things. But Colin's point is not lost on me and sure our audience, which is that why do you think these demagogues get traction? If you give people health care, if you give people, good paying jobs and job security, if you make them feel that they have some hope that their lives will be good and continue to be better, they're less likely to just hate their neighbor for no reason. Demagogues get traction. Chris Hedges articulated this years ago. He predicted Trump. They get traction, these demagogues, because our party that's supposed to be the opposition party refuses to do the work of the middle, the working class, and those in the middle class really are in the working class. They just don't want to admit it. And so it does concern me, just what we've been articulating here. No $15 wage, no eviction moratorium, no Medicare for all, not even the stupid public option, which wouldn't work, by the way. But still, it would have been something. We can go down the list. The military budget keeps going up. ICE budget goes up. CBP, Citizens Border Patrol, goes up. DHS goes up. $37 billion more for police. Qualified immunity has not been struck down. Cop City is happening in Atlanta, a city run by Democrats. And on. Eric Adams, a Democrat who has been a disaster in New York. The war against the homeless on the East Coast and the West Coast. No federal housing program. We could go down the list of all the things they could have done and should have done. Trillions of dollars lost in the military that nobody can account for. And yet None of these things. You brought up the tax credit. I kept hearing these liberals brag on and on. Biden cut child poverty in half. First of all, it was about 40%, which is, by the way, nothing to shake a stick at. And it had a time limit. It was like less than 9 months that people got this tax credit.
Yeah.
What it proved was that if you give cash relief to poor people, it instantly improves their lives. And by the way, and I will just say this, I don't get in those matches. Like I do watch Breaking Points. I get information. There are things I don't like that Crystal and Sagar say, but sometimes they bring up really good points about the working class. And I will say this, they've been good, solid on those working class issues. They showed polling, deep polling, looking at the crosstabs that showed when they instituted the child tax credit, support for the Democrats went up in the lowest 20% economically. And when it expired, it went right down. What? How is this not obvious? So I start to think it's something more sinister. I think even Democrats don't want us to believe that government can make our lives better. I think they don't want us to get used to the fact that it is completely possible to fix most of our problems. They don't want us to believe that can happen. They don't want us to believe in what could be possible. What RFK said, don't imagine what is and ask why. Think about what is and ask why. Think about what isn't and ask why not. Great words, great rhetoric. I don't know if he would have done anything about it. They don't want us to imagine why not. They want us to just be like, this is all we're going to do. And I think that's a big deal because sometime 20, 30, 40 years from now, someone's going to look back at this moment and at what we did or didn't do. And I think it's going to determine a trajectory for our nation and for the globe. And that last thing, I always do that. The last thing I want to say about this is Cornel West is the only candidate talking about the global working class and how we are all connected. I know that we all have more in common with workers in Iran, in Russia, in China, in Sweden, in Botswana, than we do with millionaires, billionaires, or the top 20% professional class in this country. We need a global movement. I don't know. So that's the only thing that's making me feel hopeful right now is
Cornel West. And I have to agree, Cornel West is a pretty hopeful sort of candidate. And I do see a lot of us on the further left is kind of invigorated with his candidacy. But let's go to Nick. Let's squeeze in these stories, Nick. We can do it. We're professionals. We got a ton of stories.
I only had 2 hours. But I got enough time for these next 2 stories in real quick. And we were talking about how Biden no different from Trump. We can go down and listen. He did a great job at that. And one of the many examples of this is the issue that the boutique left that endorsed Joe Biden pretends to care about. Cuba and being anti-imperialist in general. Cuba says Biden applies blockade even more aggressively than its predecessors. Increased funding to apartheid, genocidal Zionists in Israel. So let me get this straight, Bernie Sanders and the Bernie Sanders love. You guys want us to throw Cubans and Palestinians under the bus? Haitians under the bus after Biden's policies? In what universe is this guy the lesser of two evils, right? Aggressive neocon that took every single Trump policy and doubled down on it. Even hired Elliot Abrams, the Iran and Venezuela envoy from Donald Trump, who famously tried to overthrow Venezuela. And they pulled out Iran deal to escalate tensions. And they had a tough, hardline stance on Iran that Donald Trump did. And this is why people who think he's anti-empire is ridiculous. He was as big as an empire stamp you can get. And Joe Biden essentially copied his policy on Iran.
And you know what? And Nick, I'll just say this real quick. You know what was nefarious about Elliot was the fact that that got no coverage in the sense of Biden kind of slipped that through overnight. Fortunately we happened to hear about it, but there was nothing, in terms of, really barely anything in mainstream media in regards to that, because my guess is they knew that that was not going to be popular, especially among activists who really were against that. So they had to slip that in the middle of the night when it was not convenient for the rest of us to know in order to make that claim. So just to kind of show how nefarious Biden is in, essentially hiring the same hacks under Bush, of all people. So I just had to say that, just in a way, like, we say, like, the Democrats are the lesser evil. No, as we say, they're more effective because they're able to get a lot more shit done that is more in tune of what the military industrial complex and all these corporations want versus what the people want.
You have this example. Joe Biden is just like Donald Trump expanding empire. There's no difference between how empire acts between presidents, and this is one of the greatest examples. And now the Biden administration is actually giving one of the biggest tells. Neocons are giving one of the biggest tells, exposing their own hypocrisy. What do we say on our being all the time? Weaponized hypocrisy is the highest form of corruption. And they are telling on their foreign policy right now. What did I tell you guys? The way they talk about their enemies is how we should talk about them. The way they call Vladimir Putin a war criminal, authoritarian thug. No, Joe Biden's a war criminal, authoritarian thug. That's how I refer to him. That's how we should refer to him. The way that they are melting down, and China just having relationships with countries in our hemisphere shows exactly why their foreign policy is unhinged. And they know it's unhinged because they're complaining that China simply having ties with Cuba is a security concern. So here's the headline, and there's a few examples of this. I'm going to show you guys a crazy Fox News clip. Not long, it's only a 3-minute clip. So listen to this. China's ties to Cuba and growing presence in Latin America raise security concerns in Washington, even as leaders try to ease tensions. So I have a question for you guys. So China, working with Cuba, doing military drills in Cuba, that's a security concern. But NATO encroachment on the Russian border is not?
Right.
Explain to me how that makes so China having any sort of relationships in Latin America. Look, it wasn't even just Cuba. They said and growing presence in Latin America. So China can't do anything in Latin America. So according to you guys, it isn't United States presence in Taiwan a security concern for China?
Right.
You guys see how they tell on themselves? And now this is another example. And if you read all these articles, no one ever brings up this obvious blatant hypocrisy. Look at this. This is from the Hill. Cuba and China are a hemispheric security threat. So China building roads, forgiving debts, and strengthening relations because they're a giant growing economy, that's bad. But arming violent neo-Nazis next to a border of a nuclear power is not.
You have to understand, what do they mean by security threat? Capitalist means threatening their capital is a security threat for them.
Yeah.
When most people read that as a physical threat by military powers, that's what most regular people and the ruling class knows that most people believe that and don't understand that's not what they mean. They know that, and they don't take the time to clear it up. Go ahead, Nick.
And now this is from John Bolton. Another Trump hiree, the guy who's going to drain the swamp. the guy who's going to drain the swamp hired John Bolton, according to MAGA people. They were trying to John Bolton. China's potential military training facility in Cuba is a red flag to America. It could camouflage offensive weapons along with many other risks we simply cannot tolerate. It's a significant escalation in China's hegemonic aspirations, equal to or graver than the 1960s Soviet presence. one thing is certain: we should not stand idly by. Now, the obvious, funniest conclusion from this is you can literally copy and paste this regarding Ukraine and NATO in a statement.
Mm-hmm.
Because when Russia says that NATO encroachment on their border, the organization responsible for genocide and stabilizing Africa, it's not like they're fucking peace activists over there at NATO. They got a bad track record. They got Nazis in their organization that was implemented, right? So what John Bolton and what the neocons would say, they would say, oh my God, if you say that Russia had any security concerns in Ukraine, you're spreading Putin propaganda. That's ridiculous. Why would any Russian feel threatened by NATO or any arms deal being going on in Ukraine? That's being arming Nazis. Why would anyone be upset about that? But here, John Bolton being upset at something that's way less threatening. So here's friend of the show, Caitlin Johnstone. She says, compare the way U.S. empire managers shriek at the faintest whispers of the possibility of a Chinese military training facility in Cuba with their self-righteous indignation at the suggestion that Russia and China have any business opposing U.S. activities in Ukraine and Taiwan, which is U.S. propaganda and U.S. imperialism is so absurd, they don't even have the answer to this obvious hypocrisy that they have. Now we have another segment. This is a short clip off this. Any initial reaction before I get to this clip though? From Colin.
No, you can go ahead with the clip. Go ahead. I've seen it, so I want to react. I want to wait to react to this this segment.
You seen this one? You seen this one? All right.
Yeah, I've seen this segment. Yeah. Go ahead.
Now, this is a short clip, so let's try. It's gonna be hard, but I'm gonna try to let it play here.
Joins us now to talk about all of this. And Gordon, okay, look, they can talk and talk and talk. Does the U.S. look weak, to Edward's point, when they say we're not interested in decoupling from China?
Well, certainly. The Chinese have been engaging in dangerous and belligerent behavior. Yeah. And if anybody should be trying to mend relations, it's the Chinese, but it's us. And really what we're trying to do is, as we've heard, establish lines of communication. Well, we think we're responsible, but the Chinese see this as another vassal coming to the Grand Celestial Court to acknowledge its subordination to the Chinese. And things have gotten worse. Remember, our Secretary of State was there 2.5 weeks ago trying to do the same things. Things get worse. So I don't really see things getting better from our perspective.
There are those who say you can't decouple.
But before this guy chime in, you guys see how crazy this guy is? He considers Joe Biden's policy on China and Taiwan weak.
I've seen this guy in another interview, and he was terrible. Maybe he's the guy to go to that slightly looks Asian. I think he's half Asian, of some Asian descent, that they can move on and really talk about it. That's what they really want to do. I've seen him in like at least 2 other interviews talking this madness about China before. Go ahead.
So this is the administration that Fox News is painting as weak on China. Biden administration approves potential 440 million arms sale to Taiwan. The squad and Bernie Sanders like, I'm down. They voted for the last arm package to Taiwan. The leftists in the PMC class, right? They support it. So according to the right wing, Biden is a Chinese shill who is weak on China, and his weakness is causing the rise of China worldwide. That's the message they get it.
Can you have
Nancy Pelosi as well, Kevin McCarthy visiting Taiwan.
Yes,
well, go ahead, Zink, if you want to chime in.
No, it's just
he was just texting his camera. He had to come back out. Okay. He was just texting his camera. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so just feel free to interrupt anytime. No worries, guys. But this is the administration they painted as weak on Taiwan. And remember what I told you guys, our media in the United States is the most propagandized country in the world because we are ruled by war criminal psychopaths, right? But the corporate media sees our war criminal psychopaths and they think they're pussy. Like the Fox News thinks Anthony Blinken is a pussy. Like, and we've seen this before in press conferences where Anthony Blinken be talking about Ukraine, and in the press corps be like, Anthony Blinken, why aren't you doing more for Ukraine? And they be legitimately flabbergasted. Like it's not like when they act. I swear to God, he's not acting when he be like, do you know what I have done? Weapons I have sent to Ukraine, but he still gets grilled. And that's the same thing with China. They send in millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of arms to Taiwan. They literally escalating and doing military drills during the Taiwan Strait. The Biden has been one of the most anti-China regimes we have seen in my lifetime. But the corporate media is still saying, "Oh, you're a pussy. Why won't you do more against China?" So as bad as our politicians are, I want you guys to know our media is more war criminal, more bloodthirsty than they are. What does that say? But I think that was Zinkers. I can't see you guys, but Zinkers, if you want to chime in, or anyone, feel free. This is a short story. I think we can wrap the story. I got one more I can do. So I think actually let's finish. We finished the Fox News segment. Actually,
that's the part. Let's finish that clip.
Let's finish the clip.
They say some more stuff here.
We finish this clip and I'll give you guys thoughts and we can move on just for the sake of time. So I'll rewind it just a little bit. Let's continue. I'll let it play all the way.
Things have gotten worse. Remember, our Secretary of State was there 2.5 weeks ago, trying to do the same things. Things get worse. So I don't really see things getting better from our perspective.
There are those who say you can't decouple from China with it too entangled. And that, on the same angle of that, you could say that China needs us more than we need them. Correct?
Well, certainly their economy.
What does that statement even mean? So you gotta know he's just talking about nonchalantly. He's nonchalantly talking about destroying the global working class.
Well, it's important to understand.
Go ahead.
He did say it with a British accent, which makes us pay attention and think he knows what the hell he's talking about. I want to throw something out, which I think is important, just to rewind, although it has absolutely everything to do with what we're saying now. I think people who don't know need to be aware who Elliott Abrams is and how he represents the murderous, genocidal side of U.S. colonialism, the policies of the United States toward Central America, specifically El Salvador, Guatemala, and Nicaragua. Elliott Abrams was one of the chief engineers through the 1980s and beyond. Indigenous brown people were murdered by death squads trained, this was his policy, and Oliver North's, trained in the former School of the Americas, which used to be in Georgia. We trained these troops who assassinated a Roman Catholic Archbishop, Oscar Romero, who was saying mass because he called for peace. Elliott Abrams was one of the architects, the chief architects of a policy where they blew up bridges, schools, hospitals, and roads, where they would drag 12-year-old boys out of villages and force them at gunpoint to either join the army or be shot in the head. The people Elliott Abrams was responsible for training in November of, I believe it was 1989, death squads that they trained assassinated a radical socialist Jesuit priest, 2 of them, who were radical priests. They were good ones. Their cook, who was indigenous to El Salvador, and her 15-year-old daughter, shot them in the head, scooped out their brains, and laid them next to their bodies. This is Elliott Abrams, and he was convicted of felonies for lying to Congress and covering it up. He is a criminal, convicted in the United States, pardoned by George Bush, but still a criminal, a war criminal, and a racist and an imperialist. We have done far worse in our hemisphere than China has done. China hasn't done this in Taiwan. I mean, you go back in history, of course, there have been wars. But in the past 40 years, 50 years, when we've done this policy in Central America, it's not a mistake that Joe Biden supported those wars, too, in Central America. It's not a mistake that Biden chose Elliott Abrams. They're probably friends. People need to understand what this means. Look up what happened with Iran-Contra, where the Reagan administration, probably directed by George H.W. Bush, with Oliver North and Elliott Abrams, had a policy of genocide against brown people in Central America. And they killed tens of thousands of them, 30,000 indigenous people native to Salvador were murdered in like a year by these death squads that we trained. 30,000. China's not done that. So not only don't we have the moral high ground here, we are literally an out of control warmongering empire, and Biden appointing Abrams is a signal. This is who I am. Republicans are happy with it, but this is serious. That Reagan, what he did is what, when I started reading about it, is what radicalized me. How could we have a president that does this? And now the Democratic Party is doing it, and they want war with China. How's that going to go on?
It's not going to go well. It's not going to go well at all. And these visits with Yellen and Blinken and everything have not been well at all. And they just not have been turning out well. But go ahead, Nick, if you want to.
And I've explained this before. Their strategy, there's strategic ambiguity. You will never see this mentioned in the corporate media, but this is U.S. policy, where they send diplomats in their official statement is we support Taiwan. We support one China policy, and we support Taiwan being part of China. And that's why they send diplomats. They said we got to respect this policy. We want to restore a relationship with China. As they are doing that, they're sending weapons to Taiwan. As they are doing that, Nancy Pelosi and Kevin McCarthy is in Taiwan. So it's meant to confuse. It meant as a propaganda campaign, so they can say, "Oh, we're doing our best part." China is just overreacting as they are literally escalating, doing military drills on the Chinese strait. So let's continue this video and wrap the segment up. I got one more short segment I want to cover before I bounce out. So I rewind just a little bit more, and then we can finish the segment all the way through.
I don't really see things getting better from our perspective.
There are those who say you can't decouple from China with it too entangled.
Look, this guy's crazy. I had no idea what he's talking
about. On the same angle of that, you could say that China needs us more than we need them, correct?
Well, certainly their economy, they said, grew 4.5% in Q1, but probably 1 or 2. And it's gotten worse since then. And Xi Jinping's policies, because he's basically state-dominated economy, state-dominated society, just driving things worse, which is the reason why we have all of these Chinese migrants surging across our southern border.
Which
and by the way, Ash, those are not poor
This
people.
guy has no idea what the hell he's talking about.
$35,000 a head to pay to the
Just to get
cartels to smuggle them into the U.S.
It's remarkable. We're getting a lot of tit for tat. We still have the tariffs in place. They're saying we're not going to export any more of these 2 rare earth materials that are very important in semiconductor manufacturing. I mean, does that just continue? Is that just business as normal? It feels like it.
Well, it is tit for tat, but we shouldn't panic because the Chinese tried this in 2010 with the Japanese by putting on these export bans on rare earths. And by the way, the Chinese effort collapsed. Chinese state enterprises surreptitiously sold those rare earths to the Japanese. And if the Japanese couldn't buy them directly from China, they got them from other parties. We can do the same thing.
And very quickly, you mentioned this. The State Department has a travel warning to Americans going to China because of, being detained for basically no reason at all. And yet here we are, Janet Yellen landing in Beijing, smiling, shaking hands.
Yeah, this is ironic. You have that level 3 travel advisory.
Yeah.
The Chinese are taking hostages, and then she goes there. So, this is really bad policy on our part.
So once again, this is objectively not true. Like, we've just seen photos of Danny Haiphong in China. Is he being detained? I knew multiple professors that had European backgrounds from China during the International Leftist Coalition. Chinese professors. There's Americans in China all the time. But once again, they don't have to tell the truth. They just want you to be afraid of China for some reason. We have one more story I want to quickly get into, but I won't pass. I'll toss the panel just quickly on this topic before we move on to the next one.
No, I know the next one is tied to this or similar to this. So if you want to move on to that one, we can if you want.
So you have on that video. I don't know if you guys can hear that. I don't want to do that yet. No, not only do we have Joe Biden arming Taiwanese separatists, he is also escalating his attacks and escalating arming Ukraine and supporting the Zelensky regime, as I covered at Nick and Knight, who is not serious at all for peace. That's why he called for Crimea. The narrative that comes from the West is that we are helping Ukraine defend itself and we got to defeat Russia for democracy. So in order to fight for democracy, we must support a country bombing and killing civilians and supporting weapons and ammunitions that was supported by a ban by 100 countries because it kills civilians. But we know that Ukraine has no track record of caring about civilians. They have committed atrocity against their own people, and that's why they're saying these weapons. And now I'm gonna read this article, and I'm not gonna read the article. I'll read the headline, and I'm gonna show you this clip of MSNBC because this clip of MSNBC is also another great breakdown. But I want you guys to see how they struggle to defend. They have no shame, so they do defend it, but they struggle to defend this unbelievable decision by the Biden administration that show they don't care about human rights or the Ukrainian people at all. What are cluster munitions? Biden defends decision to send controversial weapons to Ukraine. So if you're defending your country and you care about Ukrainian people like the NATO left pretend they do, why would you send bombs that will lead to more Ukrainians dying? Like you're defending the Ukrainian homeland. Why do you need cluster bombs?
Right.
And they're saying, well, the Russians are using cluster bombs and they kill civilians. They're like, all right, so what your answer to that is, let's use them and kill civilians too.
Right.
That's your answer? Go ahead, Colin.
But what's significant about cluster munitions, which for people who don't know, essentially once you release, if you're flying them over a country and you release them, they may not necessarily detonate on impact. So essentially, these are landmines. So the U.S. is sending essentially landmines to Ukraine that can essentially kill their own.
And Colin, I was watching the White House press conference. I was thinking about streaming it. I just couldn't at the time. I might play the clip, but they asked the State Department goon during the press conference, how do you guys know that Ukraine is not going to use this on their own people? That was the question.
Exactly.
And he said, this is what he said. He said, well, when the Zelensky regime requested this, they wrote a letter promising they won't kill civilians, and that was his answer. They said in a letter that we pinky square, we pinky promise that we won't kill civilians. How do you know? That's why cluster bombs are banned by 100 countries, because you can't point it or you can't prevent the use of civilians' death and casualties. And they're going to cover that in the upcoming clip. But go ahead, Colin. I want you.
No, that was it. But that's just to tell your audience the significance of this, especially who may not know. So these are dangerous, So the idea that the U.S. is using banned weapons, to in the line of, oh, we need to help Ukraine defeat Russia, when these very bombs essentially, might potentially hurt their own. And I wasn't going to say this, but I saw a clip with Pod Save America earlier where AOC happened to be on, and she was basically still like, oh, I support Joe Biden, all this kind of stuff. Like, you support this? At least to Ilhan Omar's credit, she is trying to do something against all of this, because I know she kind of called out Elliott, I think, this week in Congress regarding his past transgressions in office.
She's writing a sternly written letter. Is that her answer?
Well, some type of legislation, but we know that's not going to mean a damn thing. But but you can give her some credit for at least trying to push the issue. But AOC is just like, at least with Pod Save America, did not mention this. Well, depending when she reported on this, it had not said anything. Actually, you know what? I take that back, because I knew about this story since last week. There were murmurs about this because I actually was going to report on this on 9 News last week. So this has been somewhat in the news somewhat since last week.
Yeah.
And no one on the squad has mentioned anything on this other than Ilhan Omar. Like,
so this is I'm gonna play this video. This is from my friend and our friend of the show, Nico. He makes a great videos on this. These videos are very short. Big shout out to Nico and Hotspot. They helped me. They taught me how to make these videos, by the way. They're very catchy. So let's
The
check
U.S. is sending thousands of cluster bombs to Ukraine, despite the fact of being against U.S. law and also violating the treaties signed by hundreds of nations, including NATO nations. And do you want to know how we know it's a war crime?
There are reports of illegal cluster bombs and vacuum bombs being used by the Russians.
It would be. I don't have any confirmation of that. We have seen the reports. If that were true, it would potentially be a war crime.
We know because the U.S. said it. The U.S. actually said it's a war crime, not us, not Nico. Nico is an atheist. I'm just repeating what the U.S. said. But like Basaki just said, we don't even know if Russia actually used them. They're just unconfirmed reports. But we do know that Ukraine is absolutely about to use them because the U.S. is sending them there. But what makes this entire situation more nefarious is the fact that Ukraine was running low on munitions. Diplomats from Russia and Ukraine were meeting to talk about peace, likely because of that. So now because Biden is rearming Ukrainian forces with illegal cluster bombs, the likelihood that these peace talks will actually lead to meaningful negotiations and ultimately peace is dwindling more and more.
Nico House, the GOAT.
That's on point. Yeah, that's on point.
On point as always for my brother Nico. Once again, make sure you guys check out Hotspot. They are producing great content with leftist content creators. They helping me make videos as well. As you guys see, they're helping me produce those quick videos. Nico is the king of them, as you guys see. So big shout out to Nico on that. Now you guys see Nico video. I'll just run through this fast quickly for time. I'm gonna give you guys a take on this after I play the video. But you guys see?
I saw that. No, I saw that earlier before I came live. But yeah, but even before that, like I knew, as I said, I knew of this cluster bomb thing since last week. It really wasn't heavily reported on since that, like it's getting more prominence now. But what I didn't know was the idea that Russia and Ukraine were allegedly, well, not allegedly, but we're talking about peace. That I didn't know.
Yeah,
so,
now there's been rumors I've been hearing of the Biden administration for the first time showing signs that they're willing to do it because the Ukrainian offensive has stalled so much. And once again, I take these things with a grain of salt. Who knows how these things are getting leaked? But if these things are even being leaked, if these stories are even being talked about, if these peak talks are even happening, it just shows that the Ukrainian offensive has been a complete failure. But let's get to this clip here because this shows. I want to show you the real base take from Nico first. We have some base takes on this as well. But now let's see how MSNBC, the Joe Biden Defense Network, how do they justify this? And she tries. Trust me, she's going to have a hard time. They're going to have a hard time justifying this, but they're going to give it their best because they get paid millions to. Watch this. I found this video very interesting.
Following some breaking news, everybody, as well, with the Biden administration expected to announce today that the U.S. will, in fact, provide Ukraine with cluster munitions. That's according to administration and defense officials as well. These weapons, right, they disperse small bombs over a wide area.
They're going to explain why
that risk harming civilian populations. More than 100 countries have signed a UN convention banning the use, by the way, of these types of munitions. Joining me now is NBC News Pentagon correspondent Courtney Cuby.
So that's what you bring
NBC
on.
News foreign correspondent Kelly.
You don't bring on a human rights activist. You know, I'm a Pentagon space person. So,
and this guy on the far right, he is brought on many times when the task when the propaganda is a very tall task to make.
Yes,
the guy on the right is the one they come to, and there's a lot
yeah,
of
I know
CIA
that
people
the U.S. Ukraine pin he has on his lapel there. So,
oh shit,
they know this is gonna be one. Hell
I just think
job. So they had to bring on some guy from the Pentagon.
I just want
to go ahead, Zinkis.
It's something that sticks in my mind is how, I mean, all war is horrendous, and there's never been a war where innocent civilians don't die horrible deaths, and our bombs always find a way to fall on the houses of the poor and working class. But cluster bombs are particularly heinous. We used them during shock and awe in Iraq, and we lied about it. The United States said we had precision bombs. The media was talking about something called smart bombs. They just made this stuff up. They took the Pentagon talking points and they're like, we're using smart bombs. They only kill the bad guys. We were using cluster bombs in Iraq. What we did in that blitzkrieg, and I'm using that word on purpose, because it's what the Nazis' whole military was based on, that idea of just like overwhelming force. That shock and awe, what we did with those cluster bombs, killed so in the first 3 months of what we did in Iraq were horrible. The fact that they're even talking about, notice we're not a signatory to that we're even talking about giving them to Ukraine. Two things: escalating the war with the nuclear power, really bad idea, and killing all you start dropping bombs that end up killing Russian civilians. Support for the Russian war in Ukraine is going to go up. I mean, in Russia, I mean, nobody wants their house bombed.
And if you're defending Ukraine, why would you use cluster bombs that could explode later, that can kill civilians to defend your country? If your objective wasn't just to increase the profits of defense contractors, right? But go ahead, Zinkas.
And just how many kids in Afghanistan, that horrible, vicious war that Barack Obama, Nobel laureate, won the Nobel Prize for it. He tripled the troops in Afghanistan. How many kids going to gather firewood out in the in the woods got their limbs blown off from those bombs that exploded later and from mines? Like, these things are horrible. No country that cares about human rights would even manufacture them, let alone even have a conversation about using them.
Yeah, now Zinkas, look how, and I was watching this, and it was very interesting because I was so disgusted watching this. You guys, and I don't know if Colin and CJ can relate to this. Dave Chappelle had a joke about this. Like, have you ever seen anything so racist it's interesting? Like, damn, that was racist. And to be honest, it's a funny joke because it's relatable. Because that happens sometimes. You see something so racist, like, damn, I kind of want to study this. Like, damn, that's like exactly the kind of shit we hear about. Like, this is the kind of psychopathic propaganda you hear about, and I was so disgusted. I was interested in this segment. Like, you guys really about to defend this? You guys really gonna do this? So let's watch this. I hyped it up enough. I rewind just a little bit for context.
More than 100 countries have signed a UN convention banning the use, by the way, of these types of munitions. Joining me now is NBC News Pentagon correspondent Courtney Kube, NBC News foreign correspondent Kelly Kobiea, who's on the ground for us in Kyiv. Also with us is Ambassador Bill Taylor, former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine and the vice president of Russia and Europe at the U.S. Institute of Peace. Welcome to you all, guys. Court, let me just start with you on this one. What more are you learning about this expected announcement from the Biden administration, and how do these munitions work exactly?
So we're learning that there are upwards of 10,000 of these munitions already sitting forward in Europe, ready to go into Ukraine as soon as the Biden administration makes that announcement and decides to send them in. So they could be in literally a matter of days. Yes. Now, what this means, the reason that the U.S. has made the decision to send these in now, after having talked about it for months and months and getting pressure from members of Congress to do so, is because of the need. There is a need to fulfill the constant difficulty in filling the 155 artillery round shortfall. So, in other words, Ukraine is using a ton of artillery on the battlefield.
She almost says the real reason here, by the way. Almost. So close. The real reason for military-industrial complex profit, by the way. You guys,
that's why I got so close. I got closer. I was like, wow, she's really about to say this? And then she stops. Because you can tell she's getting right there. She's like, oh, no, right. She backs off. Go ahead, Nick.
Sorry, CJ, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you guys see how she caught herself? Mm-hmm. Like, it's about filling the orders for. Oh, no, I mean, it's for the make sure I'll go back 10 seconds so you guys see that part and now let play.
Because of the need. There is a need to fulfill the constant difficulty in filling the 155 artillery round shortfall. So, in other words, Ukraine is using a ton of artillery on the battlefield every single day. These cluster munitions could have the ability to sort of backfill some of that. What that means is it's a munition that when it lands, it lets off a whole bunch of additional bomblets or small munitions over a wide area. Now that has the ability, depending on exactly what type of munition is in the warhead, it has the ability.
You said they call it a bomblet.
Bomblet.
Oh, they're adorable, those little bomblets. You're psycho.
Oh,
landmine. Say it. Landmine.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a cute little euphemism for a landmine. Absolutely. Great point, Colin is in, absolutely.
Vehicles and to have an anti-personnel capability. What that means is some of the munitions will fragment. You've heard the word frag, right? That has the ability to wound and kill.
Talking to their boomer audience like they're kids. You heard the word frag, right? Trying to calmly explain war crimes to them. One thing I was literally watching it with the stream interest. Look at how she's talking to them like they're kids.
Fragment. You've heard the word frag, right? That has the ability to wound and kill the enemy on the other side. So it has a usefulness on the battlefield. Now, it is also a very controversial munition. You mentioned that the U.S. is not a signatory to this convention that more than 100 other countries are a signatory to. That is
You're a
because
champion of human rights.
in certain cases, there is a high dud rate for these munitions. What that means is when all these little bomblets disperse, some of them may not explode. And what we've seen in other battlefields is civilians.
Yeah, some motherfuckers might get their hand blown the fuck off, but not everybody. This is the defense. They're struggling. Hey, by the way, guys, there's some duds. So they don't always kill people, man. You guys ever consider it doesn't always kill? Listen to this.
Come upon them in sort of in a random area, and then they may have the potential to explode, wounding and killing civilians after the fact. That's why many human rights groups are against this. Now, we've put this question to a number of administration officials over the last several weeks. The specific munitions that are forward, that are ready to go to Ukraine anytime now, Yaz, they have a dud rate that ranges between 1.3% to 2.35%. So it's relatively low. That's one of the reasons that the U.S. is.
So the argument that she's making is we're not going to kill that many kids. We promise. That's the argument they're making. We're not going to kill that many. Did she say it was 0%? No. So she's saying that we're not going to kill that many.
No, I think. Am I wrong when she says the dud rate is really low, meaning these bombs actually work most of the time, meaning we'll kill more people? Is that what she's saying?
That's what she's saying. Yeah.
Yeah. But at the beginning of the segment, they're illegal, right? Did I miss that? Or did I think about that?
Oh, no.
No, you got that right.
Signed a letter saying.
So why?
Except for the U.S.
So why, and I'm not sure because I haven't seen, but why hasn't the question been asked? Why are we using them if they're illegal to use?
Or why isn't the U.S. a signatory that so many other human rights? You see how they just kind of just skip over that,
right?
Like, why are human rights active? If we're the #1 human rights leader, we're always pointing out human rights for other countries. Why aren't we signing this? Why aren't we signing this? That other human rights organization is saying this is what happens, and by your own admission. But the simple fact, this is what white supremacy does. It's just a few black and brown people. It's okay. You get what I'm saying? It's Madeleine Albright. Was it worth it? 500,000 kids killed? Yeah. Yes, in the long run, it's worth it. This is what white supremacy does. It makes black and brown lives mean less. It makes wherever it's being used. In this case, it's being used in Russia.
Right, but that's the thing. It's
it means less than everybody else. Go ahead.
No, but that's exactly it. But it's like this is among their own. That's the thing. Like this isn't like the global South here. This is in Ukraine. So really, more people should be up in arms over this as to why we using these illegal weapons of mass destruction to allegedly counter Russia, who has not been proven that they have, I would argue, probably not have used them, probably for this reason, because they don't want to take out their own. But the U.S. is willingly giving them away to Ukraine for knowing that they'll use it. And if we kill some Ukrainian lives, who cares? Because You know, like
we got to defend democracy.
Right.
So who cares if we kill civilians? Because we fight for democracy. We fight for human rights. So we got to kill civilians and engage in war crimes to do it. You know, that's fighting for freedom for you. So this clip is almost finished. Let's finish the clip up. And we
0.3% to 2.35%. So it's relatively low. That's one of the reasons that the U.S. has made the decision to send these forward now. But even though the U.S. is not a signatory to this convention, the president still has to sign a waiver because the dud rate is over 1% before these can actually be exported to Ukraine.
So he still has to approve it because they know specifically there will be killing civilians.
Yeah.
And he approves it. This is why I believe Joe Biden was elected. They know this guy is mentally checked out, so he's just a figurehead, and the weapons manufacturers is running this whole shit. They're running this whole shit. They need an empty vessel as a Joe Biden to do this shit. They need it because would a cognitive Joe Biden? I would say his track record would say yes, but if he was cognitive, at least he might pause. And the weapons manufacturers don't want any pause in the distribution of these weapons. They just play out this. Well, it took them 6 months to get him these deadly weapons. That makes it better because he's been refraining for 6 months and now he's doing it. That doesn't make it any all better. And I think that by them saying, "Oh, they didn't want to do these things," and this is like the third time I'm hearing about stuff they're sending to Ukraine. Oh, they didn't want it at first, but now there seems to be a need. They always want to make it seem like
it's a strategy
now. Yeah, go ahead.
Right.
Yeah, it's the same with the long range missile. They keep it's a strategy of constantly delaying it to the point where even the corporate media was like, yeah, it's the Biden administration always said they won't send this, but then a few weeks later they changed their tune. The same way Western countries said they wasn't going to send tanks, and then the UK changed their tune. The Biden administration changed their tune. They send tanks. It's a coordinated strategy by them. I'll read it to you by Glenn, and I'm pretty much done. Glenn said cluster bombs are banned by a convention signed by more than 100 countries. We covered this before, including many NATO allies, because of their huge civilian tolls. But don't worry, guys. Zelensky pinky swore to the United States that he won't kill civilians with this somehow. And he says in his bomb tweet as well, the goal of the United States the goal of the United States role in this war is not to protect Ukraine or Ukrainians. It is to destroy Ukraine at the altar of the broader goal of weakening Russia, as was done in Syria. These cluster bombs will kill Ukrainian civilians for years to come.
Yeah. And I checked Common Dreams because this is where, and depending when that clip was produced, allegedly Biden has reportedly signed off on them.
Yeah,
so
it's been done. Mm-hmm.
It's as of right now, it seems that it's done. It's a done deal. So
yeah, well said. I'll pass it to you guys. That's pretty much the stories I want to cover. I actually got head off because I actually stayed later.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Go ahead. I was gonna say if you had any closing comments, and then I'll take over for this last story. Now, Professor is in the background talking on the phone. Don't think that he's just silent. He's talking to somebody else, so don't think that he already does. What's going on with you? Go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing I have, make sure you guys share and support us on Patreon. Help us pay Aaron and help us pay our labor. If you guys enjoy the content, if you guys enjoy the graphics they're helping us with, including the labor summit, and I've been reaching out to the community because I want the community to be heard during our organizing summit. You can email us at info@rev. Black Network. CJ, you can put the email up if you have it by chance. If you're an activist and you want your voice to be heard, if you have any action or any tips, any suggestions, we're gonna have Worker Strike Back organized with us as well. But we don't want to just feature them. Anyone else who is in labor, any education that must be had, I want to feature their voice during this summit. So that's why I'm personally at. That's what I'm doing. If you want to email us here, I'll be going through those, and we still got a few more weeks. So I'll be more than happy to hear from grassroots labor organizers that listen to our network, and brainstorm with you guys, because that's the community we're building. I believe in leaderless movements are being is now leading this. Worker Strike Back now leading this. We are here to educate each other. We are here to brainstorm and make each other better, and that's the goal. So thank you guys. That's all I have. Sorry I dipped out a little bit early, but I'll see you guys on Monday.
All right, Nick. Thanks you guys for joining. We only got maybe another 15 minutes to cover a couple of short stories. It's really just a video and getting your reaction. And Anthony is back. He's not on the phone anymore, so Anthony is back. So let's play, or let me play this next story. This is like a 2-minute video. This is from Democracy Now! Because of what recently happened, because we covered what recently happened. Israel going into the West Bank and having one of the largest attacks on the West Bank in over 20 years, and the deaths and all of the things that have come from that. We covered that. But one term that kept coming up, mowing the lawn. This is actually something that the Israeli government is like a phrase they use to describe something in their apartheid government. This guy in this clip describes what it means, and I just kind of wanted to play it, and then we can kind of react and then get to the next story.
In a nutshell, the idea of mowing the lawn is a doctrine that has been promoted by the Israeli military for quite a while, and is mostly associated with Israeli army policy vis-a-vis the Gaza Strip, particularly targeting the political group Hamas and Islamic Jihad and other militants. And the idea of mowing the lawn or mowing the grass is essentially this idea that the Israelis have that if there's no permanent solution to really eradicate these Palestinian militant groups, then the idea is that you're in a constant cycle to basically undercut their capacity temporarily until the next round. And this is what we've been seeing put in full force, especially since the beginning of the blockade of Gaza in 2007. Now, you've seen variations of this military policy practice in many respects, but what we've been seeing in the past few days in Jenin is that doctrine being played out in full force. I mean, this operation itself is not happening in a vacuum. For the past year and a half, the Israeli army has been focusing on cities like Jenin and Nablus in the northern West Bank, where it's been actively targeting Palestinian militants and their weapons. But of course, as Mustafa was describing, this has come at the complete collective punishment of the populations over there, especially the refugee camps, very much in the same kind of methodology as what we're seeing in the Gaza Strip. And as those confrontations have escalated between militants, both against the army and against settlements, and sometimes against cities inside Israel, that the army was coming under more and more pressure to actually go in as a ground invasion. And even 2 weeks ago, we saw, as you described, the first time that they returned to air power through Apache helicopters, which I believe were supplied by the United States, and then 2 days later through a drone strike, and basically these being the first airstrikes in the West Bank for the first time since the Second Intifada, even though they've of course been very much the modus operandi in the Gaza Strip. So this is that manifestation that we're seeing. This is the philosophy that's playing out basically as the maintenance of an apartheid regime that includes Gaza and the West Bank, and that this is the solution that the Israeli authorities are seeing from the political echelon to the military establishment.
I mean, he so perfectly describes. So basically, what's happening, what we saw in this latest sort of attack on the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. This is just part of their normal sort of ideology around keeping them like being able to establish foundations. That's always coming in them and breaking it up to basically like disrupt, which is. It's the same thing they do here. You just go in and disrupt to keep people from trying or from building power through organizing. You go in and disrupt. And that's what we saw. And if the casualties are regular people, that's just what it is when it comes to apartheid. So either of you saw this video or knew about mowing the lawn and wanted to react, or if you wanted to react to this video, I'll go to you, Colin, first, and then Anthony.
This is new to me. I haven't seen this before, but it kind of makes sense when the U.S. is funding Israel.
Yes.
So, of course, they're going to keep doing it, knowing that they basically have a blank check in terms of having them being able to do this on a regular basis. So it's not really a surprise to me. But yeah, as you said, CJ, we've seen this in our history, and we've seen this, just even within our movements here. It's just the idea of, they're looking to disrupt, but in order for them to disrupt, especially given the military industrial complex is involved, they need the money in order to do it. So they'll just be able, so the US, is basically funding Israel to be able to kind of do this as often as needed to. So we have our hands dirty in all of this as well. But, but it's not, but it just makes it stand to question why our funding of Israel should be removed, primarily to ensure that stuff like this doesn't happen, or at least not likely to happen, given if you take away Israel's funding to be able to do this. But yeah, I mean, it's not surprising at all, given our hands in this.
Go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, it is not surprising, Collins. Right on the money there, I think. This is the country whose military forces shot Shireen, the Palestinian journalist who is also an American citizen, in the face and then lied about it. United States allowed that to happen. One of our own citizens murdered by Israel. An unarmed citizen not involved in conflict, but in reporting. This is supposedly our ally. So yeah, I did look at a few quick articles on this whole idea of Israel prefers perpetual war.
Yeah.
It puts its own citizens in danger, as well as way more Palestinian folks in danger. This needs to be called what it is. It's truly evil. As we agree, like, no war is good, but some war is even more horrendous than others. And it's almost like what we're doing in Ukraine with the proxy war, dragging it out and not caring who dies. And so I think the good news is, I think the global South is getting a much louder voice lately. Countries in continents like Africa, they're not down with this. And so, when you're in our bubble of the United States, we're like, Israel, it's a democracy, and da da da. Well, there's nothing about the people of Israel. There are good people everywhere. But their government, they have a warmongering version of Donald Trump in power. And the whole government. We never hear about the Israeli peace movement in this country, and it exists. We never hear about it. We don't know the names of the people killed by Israelis' murderous military incursions into the illegally occupied territory. But I guess my hope is that a confluence of factors will create stronger alliances between the global South and oppressed people everywhere. So we can see how, once again, U.S. empire never has human rights at heart, never has quick resolutions at heart. And it's sad. And this is why, and I don't hate Marianne Williamson or RFK Jr. Actually, I think Marianne Williamson has some things to contribute. She says some very nice things about why we need to feel connected to everyone. But then on this issue, there's this huge blind spot. And I think, what can it take to get good people? Because I don't think she's evil. I just don't think she's helping. What does it take to get good people to be willing to open their eyes? And it's that like red pill, blue pill thing. I understand everyone has their own evolution. I had mine. I volunteered for Democrats for years, knocked on doors, made phone calls, went to fundraisers. I've only donated to Democrats. Slowly and gradually, I got to the point where I was like, this isn't helping. Everyone's got their own pace. But I think we have to open these conversations up. Somebody needs to challenge good people who really would do far better pushing against both parties than joining one and trying to change from within, to stand up and say, this is wholesale slaughter. Remember, Israel was on the side of the murderous, racist apartheid regime of South Africa. And what they did, what P.W. Botha and those people did to Biko and to those school children that they mowed down, that was Israel supporting another apartheid regime. And the last thing I think is just, it's just important. This has nothing to do with religion or ethnicity, right? It's not about that. It's about power for them. Criticizing the right-wing government of Israel is not anti-Semitic. We shouldn't have to say that. It's horrible to say that we have to. It's not. But we seem, the United States, very comfortable with there being a lot of chaos and a lot of murder of non-white, non-Christian people. Again, Cornel West is the only person who seems to articulate that's declared that they want to run for president. I wish we could have these conversations more.
I think that's the reason why he is garnering a lot of support. I mean, it's because of him and people like him, but it's also because there is still certain issues that, for instance, Marianne Williamson and RFK, they're just still not good on, and he is. And I think that's a glaring thing. Let's get to this next one, which is UPS strike update. And again, I'll just play a video and then get your reaction. And this is just to update everybody what's going on with UPS. This is huge if they go to strike, and understand the union leadership will be trying to avoid a strike. Union leadership is not on the side of the rank and file when it comes to going on strike. They are the ones put there to try to, no, let's calm everything down. Let's try to resolve this without going on a strike, even if it means shoving down or trying to sell the rank and file a terrible tentative agreement. But let's listen to the latest, and this kind of sums up everything here.
340,000 UPS workers are closer to walking off their jobs. The Teamsters Union and UPS walked away without a deal this week after marathon contract negotiations to avoid a strike. They went nowhere. And if an agreement is not reached by the end of the month, those distinctive brown trucks could be stopped in their tracks, I should say. A strike could have major economic consequences, since about 6% of GDP moves on UPS trucks. Here's the Teamsters president before talks broke down.
Concede to our demands to give us what we deserve, and we will go out there and ratify this agreement. Or they can take the other road, where they don't concede to our demands. They stay loyal to Wall Street and forget about Main Street.
Teamsters President Sean O'Brien is with us now. Sir, good to have you. First, how far apart are you two?
We made significant progress since January. We were down to economics, and we thought we would have a deal around 4:15 a.m. yesterday morning. But UPS quite boldly told us there was no more to give. We were focused on the part-time portion of the UPS workers who work. You know, the part-time poverty doesn't work for us in Teamsters anymore. So we were fighting hard to take care of the part-timers, and UPS said we don't have any more to give, and that was it.
You've made some progress on the MLK holiday. You've made some progress on air conditioning for new vehicles, other things as well. But when you say the economics, what are you asking for and what won't they give? Give me more about what the gap is here.
Look, there's a gap. There's no doubt that the UPS full-timers make good wages, good benefits. But what people don't know in the neighborhoods, they see their UPS driver and they love him or her, and they're happy. But they don't see the unsung heroes, the single mothers that go to work at 4 in the morning. Those trucks don't go out unless they are loaded. And our part-timers are the unsung heroes. They are working for poverty wages, and we need to drive up the starting rates of pay and reward those people that made supply chain solution happen during the pandemic, and UPS made record profits, $100 billion. They need to share some of that. They're focused on rewarding Wall Street. They should focus on rewarding Main Street. Those are the men and women who make them a success, 340,000 of them.
You talk about those drivers and the preloaders. I have several truck drivers in my family, so I know the work. Let me ask you about this. You talked about they're being well compensated. You acknowledged in your Senate testimony that the starting salary for some of those drivers, $93,000 a year, at the top of the industry. So people who are at home hearing that UPS might be, the workers might be going on strike, and they're already at the top of the heap starting for this.
It's pretty disgusting. I was waiting until it just got to where I couldn't take it no more. It's pretty disgusting, this piece of shit coon right here. And that's what he is here for. If you see a black face in a conversation, he is placed there for a particular reason, because it wouldn't be the same thing if this was a white face, a white male face given the same interview. So this guy is here to attack labor, to make labor seem like you guys just want a lot of stuff.
More.
When the point is this is what capitalists do. You have, all the full-time workers, you make all of this. So guess what we're going to do? We're going to make the majority of our workforce part-time. They're not going to get this because they're not full-time. And the part-time people, we're going to pay a quarter of what this large salary that he's bringing up. And that's what is happening here. He is trying to make it seem like you guys are making 95,000 a year. Most people don't make that, and we're looking at that. But that's not the vast majority of the people. It's the part-time workers that's making UPS go. Go ahead, Colin. You wanted to chime in?
No, exactly that. Like, he didn't ask how much of the part-time people earn. He didn't ask that, but he went right to the idea of like, the top people, like upwards of 93. That doesn't mean everyone is making 90. And I remember that was the same mess that they were doing for the railroad workers as well. They went up to the extreme salary when most, like, especially for me being a teacher, like I know this, most people are not making that extreme amount. It's definitely way less than that. So the question really should have been, what's the median, what's the average? Or like, even for these part-time workers, how much are they getting that you're determining is not enough? So, but yeah, like, and most people are going to miss that, but it's the idea of like, that's the trick that they use to kind of give the sentiment of, these bastards are asking for way too much. And they don't deserve.
Why isn't the framing? Wow, you guys only want that, and UPS is not giving you that? What is wrong with UPS? What do they want us to do? They want to affect our GDP over this little thing you guys are asking? It's not framed that way. It's always framed. Are you guys really want to do this the economy in this? Yeah, go ahead.
And I argue, the idea that we're talking about a 15 minimum 15 is not even, and like, shout out to Savvy for this because she broke it down on the stream she did this past week. But the average living wage, if you were to do it by the hour, for most states is around 25 minimum. So the idea that, like, even if they're saying, like upwards of 90K a year, okay. Like, what's so wrong with that? You always start with, especially when you negotiate, you always ask for the extreme and work your way down from there. So
let me tell you, 93,000 in California, that's not that much.
Right.
So where are they living? That's not that much.
I will say this, I'll be very transparent. Like, I make slightly more than that here in DC. That barely covers for me, like my living expenses and all my bills and all that kind of stuff. So like, depending where you are, 93 is not really that much relatively in this day and age, especially given inflation right now. So, but the idea that this bastard was like upwards of 93, Can you tell us what the lowest? Can you ask what the lowest salaries are to get some context, please?
I would like to see them. I think there should be a requirement that anybody who talks about labor issues on a show like this, the union leader and the pundit or whatever host should have their salaries posted under their names when they have these conversations.
Right.
You know, like I want to know well, they're both very high. Union leadership makes a ton of money, and the people on these on CNN and all that and Fox, they're making tons of cash. And why does it matter? Their perspective. You know, if you haven't had to make the tough decision of should I pay the doctor bill or you know, do I buy clothes for my kids for school for September? If you haven't made that or haven't made it in a long time, you don't really get what's going on. And you know, I saw there are recent, I mean, past 6 months studies showing most Americans, including most Republicans, believe the minimum wage should be somewhere between like $22 and $26 an hour or more. That's most Americans. You can't get most Americans to agree it's raining. Most Americans think it should be over 20, and we still have these clowns in the Democratic Party talking about 15. We're done with 15. We demand 30, we settle for 25, and not incrementally over 3 or 5 years. Now, I think I would like to see some solidarity between the Writers Guild workers, who I completely support, and this strike. I would like to see cross-union support. We didn't see it for the rail workers. Okay, let's move forward. Here's your opportunity now. Writers Guild on strike, we support you. Stand up and say you support UPS workers.
Right. But Anthony, there's going to be an issue there because I reported on this a couple of weeks ago, and like it's difficult for that solidarity now when union leadership in many industries have already endorsed Biden already.
Yeah.
That's what makes it extremely difficult. Like the teachers union has already endorsed Biden. The nurses union has already endorsed Biden. So really right now, like it infuriates me that something like this, and they already gave that endorsement, to me is a slap in the face, and it kind of undermines what UPS workers are doing here. And looking at the graphic underneath, and I'm sure these are the part-time workers, they only want $5 more an hour. $5. And you can't even do that? $5 an hour, better health care, and retirement benefits. That to me seems more than reasonable. If anything, I would argue you should ask for more than $5. But whatever.
And it's not that they can't afford it. It's just that they go scorched earth. It's like the NRA will never even agree to a reasonable gun law because in their mind, slippery slope, it's going to get worse, whatever, they're idiots. Same thing with these companies. And same thing with the Democrats and Republicans. We don't want to give the people anything because we give them something. They know, oh, you can give me something. They'll ask for more. And maybe, and I think you're right, Colin, absolutely on the money with the whole thing about the union leadership. But that doesn't mean rank and file can't speak up. And this is where true organizing happens. You know, as we push out the duopoly, we need to push out union leadership of that. You know, there's some good union leadership out there, but not these guys. And there needs to be, I want to see rank and file Hollywood writers who are being interviewed stand up and say, I support the UPS workers. That to me, like, I know the idea of a general strike, everyone, it sounds great. I think it's a great idea. But in reality, I think it happens where there's a connection between one strike and another, and then another, and then another. Mm-hmm. And we just have to have these conversations. So like with your labor summit, glad you guys are doing it and putting the work in for it. It would be wonderful to see that, to see representatives. I would love to see a WGA Writers Guild person on here and hear what we have to say. and hear what a UPS worker has to say, and maybe get a rail worker. Anyway, I got to bow out.
Yes.
I wanted to.
What can people find you? Any last words, sir? Go ahead.
Oh God, I hope they're not. Yes, Twitter at Anthony Zenkis, or just put in Prop Zenkis, and you'll get me. And I just want to thank you all for the giving the deep dive and the recurring time to Dr. West. I think that's so helpful and wonderful that he has offered to continue to do that. It's incredible. And I would love to see Dr. West hit Trump country. I'd love to see him go to East Palestine, Ohio, which has been abandoned by both parties, and talk to those people whose lives have been ruined by industry, capitalism, and a negligent government. So I'm looking forward to that and all the solidarity work you're doing. And Colin, it was great being on a panel with you. Appreciate it, sir.
All right, and I will put you in the back. Thank you again, sir. I'm sure we'll reach out sometime next week. I'm sure you'll be back on the network for one of the episodes. So I think we can end it here, Colin. There is one more story that Marianne Williamson lose more staff, but I think I'm going to save that for tomorrow's stream so we can give it its own thumbnail. So I think that's what we're going to do. But tell us what you got going on over at INN and what's coming up for you. Anything, any labor things you're doing, any organizing you're doing, anything you want to shout out?
Well, I'm on summer break right now, so I'm going to be using it just mostly working on stuff for INN since I have some time. I was on vacation this past week, so I'll be back on INN News with Reef Freeland Wednesday night at 9 Eastern. And then if you want to find me and then all of our other folks at INN, you can go to indienews.network and you can see a list of everyone who's there. So kind of taking the summer off since it's been a long school year. So just taking the well-deserved break and kind of working on some stuff for school, but mostly trying to work on stuff for the network over the next few weeks.
That's great. And if you haven't checked them out, make sure you check out INN. We have a website. They got a YouTube channel. They're on Rumble. They're on everywhere. So just make sure you reach out and check out Colin. What's your YouTube or what's your Twitter handle? It's not showing. I don't know how to make the name show up on here.
Oh, my Twitter handle is Ogbonna. So OGBONNA_Colin with 2 L's on Twitter. If you want to find me there. But again, if you go to indienews.network, you can find my name, Colin Rags Carter, and then all my links, at least on social media, will be there. It's usually the easiest way you can find me.
Awesome. All right, Colin, I'm going to put you in the back, sir, and I'll give the final words and head out here. Thank you again. We'll be in touch. I'm sure you'll be on next week or the week after back on the RBN.
Well, thanks, CJ.
All right. See you, sir. I guess we can throw this back up, and I'm going to bring up the closing video here. But thanks, everybody, for watching. I guess I can show you the headline. Even though we're not going to cover it today. Let me do that. I'll show you the headline because it's from Politico, and it came out yesterday. But Marianne Williamson keeps bleeding staff. 6 more depart in internal feud. The staffers left through a round of firings and resignations, and this is new on as of yesterday. This came out on Thursday. Actually, let me say this. Hours after Marianne Williamson announced the hiring of her 3rd campaign manager in 5 months, 6 staffers left her team through a round of firings and resignations. I wonder what the hell is going on over there at her campaign because, geez, I mean, Let me continue. The departures came primarily over a fight about Williamson's ballot access operation or lack thereof. The campaign's entire 3-person South Carolina operation, which had been led by Marcurius Byrd. Now, if you remember him, he was the one who was interviewed by Brianna Joy Gray on bad faith, along with the New Hampshire state director, and I think his name is Carlos Cardone or Cardones or something like that. So those two did an interview on bad faith because was trying to say, hey, you guys are the two state reps, the South Carolina and then the New Hampshire. What do you guys? What's the plan? They kind of talked to him, if you remember, just trying to get you to jog your memory. Now let's continue. The campaign's entire 3-person South Carolina operation, which had been led by Marcurius Byrd, resigned, according to 4 people with knowledge of the campaign's operation and team discussion, granted anonymity to discuss internal dynamics. In addition, here is the person I just mentioned, Carlos Cardona, that's the right name, who was recently promoted to head the campaign after serving as New Hampshire state director, fired 2 national field directors and a member of Williamson's New Hampshire team, according to those same people. One of the 4, who is a current staffer, attributed the changes to Cardona, quote, stepping in as a new campaign manager and just his approach to reorganizing and restructuring the campaign to be cash efficient. They're not getting enough campaign donations, but also incredibly nimble on the ground in key primary states. But 3 other people said the staff departures were connected to a previous staff meeting where Williamson was confronted by aides about her campaign priorities. Like, are you really trying to win here, Marianne? It seems like that's what the staff is asking her. Let me read this below here, below the picture. This is a caption. The team is now operating with a skeleton staff of about 12 people as Marianne Williamson increases her campaign events. The staffer said they were concerned that too much attention was being placed on social media and not enough on getting Marianne Williamson's name on the ballot beyond New Hampshire and South Carolina. Wow. Wow. Let's continue. Each state has their own laws and requirements, and typically expert consultants are hired to handle the specifics to get a candidate on the ballot. Quote, during that meeting, there was just a vibe that she felt attacked and an insinuation at the end of the call that some staff were not going to make it to the end of the week, end quote, said one person with knowledge of the campaign and campaign's deliberations. After the staff meeting, Williamson told staffers that she felt ambushed by her own team. 2 of the 4 people, including other current staff, told Politico, adding that she hasn't acted on their concerns about ballot access. Quote, she didn't listen to anything that was said, end quote. One of those people, quote, clearly because the people who expressed frustration were fired, end quote. Williamson's campaign faces a number of hurdles beyond ballot access. The Democratic National Committee has decided not to host debates with President Biden's primary challengers. In addition, there has been consistent staff turnover, including several campaign managers, coupled with money worries as the campaign lags behind her fellow Democratic primary opponents. 2 of the 4 people told Politico that Marianne is likely, or Williamson is likely to report less than $1 million in donations on her next quarterly financial report. Cardona did not respond to our request for comment, and the campaign declined to speak on the record to questions about the most recent departures and the staff meeting on the ballot. A spokesperson on condition of anonymity questioned the relevance of them. Quote, you would think the journalistic focus of Marianne Williamson campaign would be about her gains in polling, landing key political endorsements and attracting new supporters. But no, we're once again responding to internal staffing decisions being made to strengthen our position in this presidential primary race, end quote, spokesperson said. Quote again, every campaign or company will adjust on strategy and face tough staffing decisions to become more efficient with resources. Williamson registered significant early support, polling about 10% in surveys, but there has been many gains since her launch. The team is now operating, but there haven't been many gains since her launch. I said it wrong. The team is now operating with a skeleton staff of about 12 people as Williamson increases her campaign events. This is all bad for the Marianne Williamson campaign. And this, I mean, this can't be good for the people that has been pushing her, not for the crystal balls, the Kyle Kalinskis. Let's see if they do a video on this. Vanguards. Let's see if they do a video on this. The Katie Halpers, the Brianna Joy Grays. Are they doing content on all of the turmoil of this campaign? No. It's truly misleading. I'll use that friendly or better word of using it or saying it as misleading. But here is where we're going to leave it. I am going to play or go back to Twitter for a closing video. Oops. A closing video here and to get out of here. But let's start with a couple, or let me go to a couple of super chats. I put them up already, but this time I'm going to read them. Spoke with UPS driver today. The probability UPS strike in central New Jersey will be the probable UPS strike. Oh, I'm sorry. The probable UPS strike in central New Jersey will be at 1 Clover Place, Edison, starting the end of the month if no contract, if no fair contract. And to that point, Rome is in contact with another driver. I believe he's in Ohio, or this person is on Ohio, drivers in Ohio. So Rome is going to travel to Ohio to be there when they walk off the job. They're supposedly scheduled to walk off in Ohio. I don't know if it is anywhere else. July 31st. I think it's 2 p.m. Eastern. So Rome will be there. Thank you for that super chat, Janice. The next one is a super sticker, I believe. And this is Dried Brain Freeze. Thank you for that super chat. The next one, again, ARJ 1997, Human Rights Group said cluster bombs are illegal, and the U.S. said that use of these bombs is a war crime. But if they suit our imperialist goals, then the U.S. will ignore their previous opinions. As we saw the video of Jan Psaki saying these are war crimes if Russia did it, but now we're doing it, and there's no talk of this being a war crime at this point. Only that some other countries are signatories of being against this as a tactic. I thought Ukraine was winning, right? Why would you need these cluster bombs if Ukraine was winning, right? It's a tell. Thank you for that, Franklin. Another super chat from Plato's Beard. A day without hypocrisy in the West is a day wasted. Another great super chat. This one, another one by Plato's Beard. This channel is becoming my favorite Friday evening hangout. It's evening over there where this person is. Great insight from the belly of the beast, and we are the imperialist core. That's why we are the belly of the beast. Thank you again for that super chat. Here's another one. If they can't win without us, join us or lose. And that's Cornel or Bust 2024. Thank you, Ricky Perez Jr. And then welcome Zach Vance, brand new member to the RBN community on YouTube. Thank you for that. Now, if you really want to support RBN, if you want to support Aaron, there's two ways. We have a fundraiser, but the other way is if you become a Patreon member. And it's just patreon.com/Revolutionary Blackout. You can find ours, and we got different tiers. I believe the first one is $1. Maybe it's $2. I'm sorry to say it that way. $1 or $2. So if you can afford $1 or $2 a month, that's the best way to support Aaron, our graphic designer, the only employee for RBN, or RBN, because that money is our most solid money that we get, not depending on YouTube and super chats. That's just solid money we get. So if you're able to support us over at on Patreon, please do. Now let's go to a closeout video. I want to see if Nick put up a new one of the videos he's been making. what did he call them? I forget the app that hotspot that he's been calling. But he puts up that the same article I was just reading. This one here, let's go ahead and let this be our outro video. This is one that Nick put out, and it says billionaires and corporations are making record profits while 2/3 of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. The ruling class keep workers distracted with stupid culture wars while they siphon our wealth. And that is to preface the video. Thank you everybody for joining us on this Friday. Friday's always a slower day as far as traffic, but we had a lot of people here. Let's read this one. What's left? News and analysis. I'm far behind, but just wanted to say that was a great discussion on the trans topic, especially by Professor Zunkas. Keep up the great work. Yes, Professor Zunkas is a trauma therapist, long in the field. He's a professor at Columbia University and also Adelphi, which I believe is an online university. So check that out. Thank you again. What's left? News and analysis for that super chat. And I keep getting another one. Here's another new member here, and I believe that is Fat Man TV. If the @ stands for A, Fat Man TV, brand new member. So 2 new members during this stream. Thank you so much for your brand new membership. I'm gonna put myself in the back, and you can still hear me though. And I'm gonna play this Nick video as our outro video. Thank you again for watching us on this Friday. Hit that like button on your way out. Share this stream. And here is Nick to close us out on this stream.
Already added $852 billion to their wealth in the first half of 2023. They just getting started. I feel like people can't even wrap their minds around.
Okay, let's try this again. So that one had, anyway, I'll just play it instead of explaining it. So let's share my other screen and play the video from there. 1 second here. Oh, I'm moving tomorrow. Oh, let me say this now that I'm back. Let me say this. I want to thank everyone who donated to the fundraiser. Let me see if I'm able to bring it up here. Go. Let me see. We hit the $3,000 target yesterday evening. And I want, oh, wow. We're now over the target. When I checked this earlier this morning, we were just at 3,000. Let me share the screen. And now it looks like we've crossed over and we've went over it. So the target was 3,000, but we're now sitting at $3,110. So I want to thank everybody who donated because we're approved credit wise. We were approved for the place. We were just sitting on waiting to see if we were able to get the money to move in. And we finally got it yesterday. So signing some agreements today, some lease today, and then tomorrow we get to move in. So I want to thank every single person that donated here. And we just got another few $110. Literally, this just had to have just happened earlier today because it wasn't that amount when I checked it late last night or early this morning. I can't remember, but thank you for that. And I think there might be another fundraiser I can get to here. Let me see if there's another fundraiser I can get to. Oh, is this it? So this is an old fundraiser that was for a while sitting at about $750. But we recently got some new donations 5 days ago that brought us to the target. So this is money, that $300 extra that we just got. Because understand, the $700 of this was taken out. This is an old. But we recently got 5 days ago another $300. So that will be going to pay for labor to Aaron. So thank you again for that. And then there was another one. Don't see it. There's another one we made for Aaron. But anyway, so thank you again. Even if I'm not able to bring it up for you to see it, but thank you again. I don't know the other link, and yeah, it doesn't look like I have the other link. So thank you again for all your help. You've been donating to Rome. He's gotten a library nicely done, putting in the windows. Now he's working on the flooring, just step by step. All of you have been donating to help RBN do these types of things, to help pay people their fair labor value, to help the Skid Row fundraiser, to help me with my housing, to help RBN with the library in Detroit. So our community has really come through for us, and we just want to make sure everybody knows we greatly appreciate that. Oh, I shared the wrong screen. This is the right one with Nick on it. So greatly appreciate all of that. Now, here is the video now that I can go to really close out today. And just want to thank everybody again. I'll put myself in the back off screen. And great video by Nick. I'll make sure not to close it this time.
Already added $852 billion to their wealth in the first half of 2023. They just getting started. I feel like people can't even wrap their minds around how much money this is. So I did the math. I checked the books once again. On average, these billionaires are making around $10,000 per minute. So what is the cost of their luxurious, cancerous-like existence? Well, you have 2 out of 3 Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck. You have 34 million Americans who are food insecure, aka they are hungry. What people need to understand is that the money and resources from the billionaire class, it doesn't come out of nowhere. It doesn't grow on money trees. It doesn't come from a genie in a lamp. It comes from your labor value. It comes from them stealing and siphoning resources from our community. And the ruling class stops people from realizing this because they want to distract them with nonsense culture wars that is meant to divide the workers and break class solidarity. Now take Elon Musk, for example. By far the richest and leading by a large margin. In 2023, he made $97 billion thus far. And that's why he's the lead culture warrior. That's why he wanted people to be focused on the culture war so the workers can fight each other. Elon Musk says the woke mind virus is pushing civilization to suicide. No, Elon Musk, that's the billionaire class. These distraction techniques is not going to work on me, billionaires. I know exactly who our enemies are.
liberal Western democracies heavily rely on state violence, and the French people had enough. So France is protesting because the police killed a 17-year-old boy during a routine traffic stop. Why do you even have a gun during a routine traffic stop? Comply or die. So the Western liberal democracies, who essentially have the comply or die mentality when it comes to their own people, are now mad that the French people are resorting to violence because the state didn't comply with them. Violence is only okay when the government does it. What do you guys think happens to the psyche of a populace who lives under a tyrannical government who often justifies the uses of state violence? Do you guys think it's a coincidence that the United States suffer from so many mass shootings, while at the same time being the largest exporter of violence and leading empire in the world? In Africa, France has killed millions of Africans and often used torture and rape as a weapon against their populace. Since 1960, France has assassinated 22 African leaders. As we speak, Emmanuel Macron is using heavily armed tactical units and armored vehicles against their own civilians. I guess violence is okay when the government does it. Western governments are shoring up their police states in anticipation of the social unrest to come as a result of late-stage capitalism and their authoritarian violent tendencies.